Chapter 524. Lu. As Smith often called him that, Lu Qing already had a reaction to it. However, when he looked in the direction of the voice, all he saw were two unfamiliar Caucasian students. Sensing his gaze, George and Wilton got even more agitated. They blurted out a series of words and slang. Not only were they as fast as a machine gun, but they also interfered with each other. Lu Qing, whose hearing was barely good enough, was confused. He could only vaguely make out the familiar words, King of Youth League. However, the professional security guard, who had put some distance between them, understood most of it. That Asian boy is in the top 4 of the King of Youth League. He's the idol of those two students. I wonder what competition it is. Looks like they're hardcore fans of Chinese culture. They're crazy about martial arts, which is more mysterious than martial arts. The security guard gave his evaluation and thought highly of Lu Qing. He took out his encrypted phone and started contacting the headquarters. As a professional bodyguard, when an unknown person with a certain level of strength appeared around his employer, he had to carefully investigate the background of the person, prepare a plan, and guard against accidents. Participated in the King of Youth League. They call him Lu. He described Lu Cheng's surname with a similar pronunciation. Please reply as soon as possible. After sending the message, he held his phone in his hand and waited for a reply. He looked at Lu Qing warily and observed his interaction with the students. Just then, his phone buzzed and vibrated wildly. It almost broke free from its restraints and escaped. The senior security guard picked it up and looked at it, only to see one shocking blood-red word after another on the screen: very dangerous. Do not approach. Avoid him. Stay away from him. Oh my God. The senior security guard froze for a few seconds and subconsciously put some distance between them. When his brain finally understood the situation, he suppressed his fear and rushed into the classroom with his head down. He grabbed his employer and whispered, "Go. Go. Go. Go." Regardless of whether the other party had any ill intentions, leaving first was definitely the right thing to do. Lu Qing didn't notice this little interlude. After Yen Jika's translation, he roughly understood that he had met two true fans. He returned their greetings with a smile. Wilton, the freckled, brown-haired youth, praised him excitedly. At the end of it, he nervously extended an invitation. Are you free these days? Can you come visit our martial arts hobby club? It would be even better if you could tell us more about the mysteries of Chinese martial arts. George scolded his companion under his breath, feeling that he was too nervous to speak clearly, so he quickly added, "There's a martial arts club in Connecticut University, and we're one of the members. Everyone is very interested in Chinese martial arts, and we hope to get a more detailed introduction from you." Holding Yen Jika's hand, Lu Qing heard the girl's eager reaction when she heard the words, Martial Arts Hobby Club. He understood. Tilting his head, he chuckled and asked, "Do you want to stretch your limbs?" Ever since she came to the United States in August, other than her daily training and her occasional guidance, Ku had not enjoyed a battle for a long time. For a martial artist who liked to participate in such activities, this was not something to be happy about. With her husband by her side, she didn't need to think about anything else. Yen Jika thought for a while and nodded reluctantly, with her eyes shining. Then let's go take a look in the afternoon. There are no classes anyway. All right. Lu Qing turned to George and Wilton and smiled warmly. How about this afternoon? We'll be there around 2. All right. No problem. No problem at all. The blonde youth, George, almost slid to his knees in celebration. After getting the address, Lu Qing waved to the two foreign fans and walked out of the campus hand in hand with Yen Jika. Aya. As they walked, the girls suddenly stopped and blurted out in frustration, "I didn't bring my martial arts suit and shoes. How are you going to stretch your limbs?" "Ku, you don't look like you're reluctant at all." Lu Qing laughed inwardly and said calmly, "Why do you think I said we'll be there at 2? Isn't it just to give us time to drive home and get our things?" Yen Jika turned her head in surprise and stared at Lu Qing with her eyes wide open for more than 10 seconds. Then she broke into a smile and gave him a thumbs up. 5-star rating. I didn't even get it. What should I do? I feel like Cheng has surpassed me in terms of intelligence. Poo poo poo. No way. It must be because I'm sleepy. Thinking of this, she quickly changed the topic. Then what are we having for lunch? Before Yenjika could finish, she remembered something. She took out her phone, unlocked the screen, lowered her head and started typing. Lu Qing did the same. After a while, the girl waved her phone and suggested a little proudly, "Let's have this one. It's in a commercial building nearby. It's a seafood restaurant in Connecticut that has been operating for decades. This is a guide I made in my spare time from studying." Looking at the address, route and name of the restaurant on the girl's screen, Lu Qing suddenly laughed and raised his phone to show her the screen. The same picture and the same words. What a coincidence. I made a guide too, he said with a smile. Yenjika focused her eyes and smiled like a flower. The tacit understanding grew, and the two of them swung their hands together, following the route given by the map. They slowly walked forward, glancing at each other from time to time, and then smiled as they turned their heads to look to the side. Around them, white snow pressed down on the branches, and students walked back and forth. 2:00 in the afternoon at the Martial Arts Hobby Club. At home, Yenjika had already tied her hair into a ponytail and changed into a full set of white martial arts suit with black edges. She looked both youthful and charming, and her face was so radiant that George, Wilton, and the other martial arts club members couldn't take their eyes off her. They couldn't believe that it was the usually old-fashioned and conservative Sophia. Although the two countries had different aesthetic standards, their cultures had influenced each other for many years. True beauty was still recognized. Sophia's features were exquisite, but her figure was too average. George and Wilton looked at each other and shook their heads. They were loyal fans of big breasts and big buttocks. They found Susan very sexy. In comparison, Yenjika was an angel who could be appreciated with a calm mind. After chatting for a while, Lu Qing, who knew what his wife was thinking, suggested actual combat training. Her. George pointed at the slender Yenjika and blurted out in shock. Is there a problem? Yenjika knew that she was being discriminated against and felt a little annoyed. Thinking of Ren, who looked like a cartoon character and a doll, George quickly shook his head. No problem. Lu Qing laughed and raised his right hand to announce the start of the match. George gathered his thoughts and got into a boxing stance. He took a few tentative steps and threw a punch. Yenjika shook her shoulder and turned her arm into a spear. With a snap, she stabbed at her opponent's throat, forcing him to raise his fist and shrink his head to defend himself. With her joints springing and fascia stretching, the girl took advantage of the opportunity to launch 24 blizzard strikes. After 3 punches in a row, she suddenly swung her waist, tightened her trousers, and gave a low kick. George, who was already a little flustered, was suddenly kicked. He raised his right leg to block and swung back, and his body fell forward. Next. Lu Qing reached out to support George and let Wilton take over. This Caucasian student's skills were probably only of amateur third pin, but his body condition was good and his arm strength was sufficient. Overall, he was probably of amateur first pin. It was a pity that he couldn't make full use of his strength. Wilton was slightly weaker than George, but Yenjika, who hadn't used her skills for a long time, let go of one opportunity after another to prolong the match. However, the result was not in doubt. Wilton was hit by her sliding punch that contained meteor force and almost vomited on the spot. The Caucasian girl, Colleen, was next. Yenjika changed her style and applied what little she learned from watching Lu Cheng's battle videos into the match. After defeating 5 students in a row, her physical strength was obviously depleted. Her spirit was even worse. A thin layer of sweat appeared on her forehead. She chose to stop and rest. Lu Qing helped her wipe her sweat with a towel and asked George and Wilton casually, "You're from Jaruga sect, right?" "We used to be," Wilton answered bitterly. George explained in the same tone, "We left because we couldn't become combat apprentices for a few years." "What's the problem?" Lu Qing asked curiously. We couldn't awaken our own spirit. George sighed and looked at Lu Qing expectantly. Lu, do you think there's hope for us to learn Chinese martial arts? If we can't awaken our own spirit, then it's more difficult to practice still stance. Of course, different martial arts systems focus on different aspects. It's not impossible for them to enter meditation. Lu Qing thought for a moment and said, calming the mind and focusing on the mind are the prerequisites of most martial arts and combat sections. However, everyone's methods are different. Jiruga combines self-hypnosis, Mission sect leaves their worries to God, and our country's martial arts emphasizes daily practice to get rid of distracting thoughts and seek for peace of mind. If you can't do this, you can only place your hopes on modern scientific research or cult-like martial arts. When we practice Jiruga, we can become very quiet, but we can't feel our own spirit, Wilton answered bitterly. Is it because our awareness is too strong and we instinctively resist self-hypnosis? Lu Qing saw that more and more martial arts club members had gathered around. He pondered for a moment and said, then I'll do a few moves and you guys can feel it. After that, he took off his jacket and let Yen Jika hold it. He got into a stance and slowly punched and pulled back his arm. There was nothing special about his moves, and they were so slow that they were useless in actual combat. George, Colleen, and the rest watched blankly, not knowing what was going on. Gradually, they felt that Lu Cheng's movements were like the gentle surface of a lake or the unfolding of clouds. They couldn't help but become quiet, unwilling to disturb the natural harmony or disturb the peace in their hearts. Away from the hustle and bustle of the city, at this moment, they seemed to see the deep blue sea and the sparkling waves under the moonlight. When Lu Qing stopped his slow punches and kicks, the surroundings were as silent as a church that had just finished praying. There's hope for those who were quiet just now. He smiled, took his jacket from Yen Jika and put it on. He whispered, do you want to fight a few more rounds, or do you want to shower and go home? I'll shower at home. I forgot to bring shampoo and facial cleanser. The girl bit her lip and replied. She felt that her IQ was at its lowest today. Lu Qing laughed, pulled the girl over, waved to George and the rest, and walked slowly towards the entrance of the martial arts club. It was only then that George and the rest woke up from their daze, as though they had just heard a symphony that cleansed their hearts. Lu Qing and Yen Jika's figures had already disappeared at the entrance, leaving behind some whispers in Chinese. Is this the result of your understanding of enemy heart-freezing move? Yeah, Coach Yen has a good eye. At the same time, a security company sent out a warning to its partners. China, Wue Club, Lu Qing, has appeared in Connecticut. Extremely dangerous. Lu. In the Msasi Martial Arts Club, a black-haired, brown-eyed young man saw the news. His lips curled into a smile, and his eyes shone like the stars in the sky. P.S. Looking for monthly votes on the last day. Oh right, something might happen in the afternoon, but it hasn't been decided yet. If I don't update at 7, then it will be at 11. Chapter 525. After leaving the martial arts hobby club, Lu Qing and Yen Jika went straight home. They planned to go to the supermarket this weekend to stock up on ingredients for next Monday's New Year and birthday celebration. After showering, drying her hair and changing into a fresh set of home clothes, Yen Jika stood in front of the bed. She spread her arms and leaned back, falling into the blanket comfortably. Then she said coquettishly, Qing, I'm going to sleep first. Come and massage me until I fall asleep. Okay. Lu Qing smiled and leaned over. Controlling his body, he used the most suitable strength to release the tremor force to relieve the tension and deep tiredness in her muscles. She closed her eyes in satisfaction. A little higher, a little higher. Yes, right here. It's so sore. Ouch, it's so sore. My poor old waist. Yen Jika guided her, personal masseur. Before she finished her words, she suddenly felt Lu Cheng's movement stop. She let out 2 muffled laughs. The girl was at a loss at first. Then she came to her senses and buried her face in the pillow. She hit the side and said fiercely, it's all your fault. Lu Qing apologized, seriously. His technique became more and more exquisite. It didn't take long for Yan Jika's whole body to relax. Her tiredness was relieved and she began to feel sleepy. After massaging for a while, he saw that the girl's breathing had stabilized and she had fallen asleep. Lu Qing retracted his hands and lay on the side. He planned to play with his phone for a while before going to the lawn outside to do some more training. Just as he got into position, Yenjika rolled over as if she had an automatic radar. She wrapped her arms around her chest and raised her right leg slightly above her knee. In the blink of an eye, Lu Qing was tied up. The culprit didn't move at all. She was sleeping soundly. Who is sleeping so soundly? Lu Qing looked at the girl's quiet and beautiful face with a smile. Looking at her, he suddenly felt a little sleepy. Sleeping so soundly. This kind of life is so relaxing, relaxing. Lu Qing didn't resist the call. He hugged Yenjika, closed his eyes and fell asleep. Lu Qing didn't know how long he had slept. When he woke up, it was already dark outside. It was quiet everywhere. Only a faint light shone through the curtainless window, casting a faint glow on the room. What time is it? Yenjika opened her eyes in a daze and asked casually. Lu Qing smiled lazily and said, "It's just getting dark, about 6 o'clock. Yes. Yenjika changed her position and lay side by side with Lu Qing. She said lazily, "I'm a little hungry, mine is already protesting." Lu Qing tilted his head and looked at the girl's small and delicate ears. "Let's not make any troublesome dishes later. We'll defrost the meat, cut it into pieces, and roast it. We have several kinds of dipping sauces from Shushan, Songqing, Dongying, and Gaoli at home. You can choose whatever you want." Yenjika planned generously. "Then we'll wash some vegetable leaves." As she spoke, she suddenly bit her lower lip and said in an aggrieved manner, "But what if I don't want to move? I just want to lie down like this." What a coincidence. Me too. Lu Qing felt that he was both captured by his little fairy and the quilt. "Do you want to starve your wife to death?" Yenjika snorted. I'll get up right away." Lu Qing struggled to turn around and leave the quilt, only to find that the girl also sat up. Seeing his surprised and confused expression, Yenjika raised her chin and looked to the side. "I have to supervise you." Although she said she was supervising, she dominated the whole process. Not only did she busy herself, but she also gave orders. When the electricity was plugged in and the meat in the roast pot was sizzling, the process finally came to an end. The surroundings were peaceful, the lights were warm, and the aroma of the meat filled the air. Lu Qing and Yenjika looked at each other, smiled, and raised their glasses. It was impossible to be touched so often in life. This was enough. Don't overcook the meat. The fat parts of the beef are easy to crumble and the texture will harden. The girl recalled her past experience and dug out her experience of roasting meat, trying to make herself seem omnipotent. "I'm Coach Yen." Halfway through the meal, Lu Qing suddenly stopped and turned to look at the door. "What's wrong?" Yenjika asked blankly. "Someone is approaching." Lu Qing stood up and walked to the door. He looked relaxed and didn't feel any danger. After 10 or 20 seconds, the doorbell rang. He counted to 3 and opened the door. A middle-aged man in a black tuxedo with a bow tie of the same color stood outside. His shirt was neat and tidy. He had an eye-catching mustache and spoke with a strong accent. "Hello, are you Mr. Lu Qing?" "Yes." Lu Qing looked at him, puzzled. The middle-aged man handed over an invitation with both hands and replied with a smile, "My master would like to invite Mr. Lu to a banquet this weekend. If possible, he hopes that you can have a friendly duel with him. This will not be made public. Only the guests of the banquet can watch." A challenge is coming? Lu Qing thought. He took the invitation and opened it. He saw the logo of a fist holding a trident in the Msasi martial arts arena, the location of the banquet, the exact time, and the name of the signatory. Brandon. Lu Qing read out the name and knew who it was. He looked up at the middle-aged man and nodded politely. I'll be there on time. Thank you. The middle-aged man placed his right hand on his chest and bowed. After sending him off, Lu Qing closed the door and met Ko Qian's scrutinizing gaze. What's the matter? Yen Jika could only vaguely hear the words banquet and duel. Brandon from the Jaruga sect wants to challenge me at a banquet of high standards. Lu Qing smiled casually. Brandon was the most popular grandmaster of martial arts in the Msasi martial arts arena in recent years. He was only 22 years old and had already become a senior, which was equivalent to an inhuman. He had just turned 24 this year and was one of the top rising stars in the entire United States. His father, Adrian, was also a veteran martial artist. He was the middle-aged Caucasian man wielding a big sword that Lu Qing saw when he first arrived at the Msasi martial arts arena. Two veterans in one family had established the Jackson family's position in Connecticut. When? Yen Jika's eyes sparkled as she asked with great interest. For such a formal challenge, safety was guaranteed. Moreover, both parties were at the inhuman stage and had strong control. Therefore, she wasn't worried. Tomorrow night. Lu Qing acted like an American movie. He bent down and extended his hand. Miss, would you like to go with me? My pleasure. Yen Jika smiled sweetly and extended her hand. The next day at 7 in the evening, the couple arrived at the Riverside Manor in Songqing University's martial arts suit as a couple's outfit. Under the guidance of the servant, they entered the banquet hall. Lu Qing's nose itched with the smell of perfume, making him want to sneeze. He and Yen Jika weren't dressed impolitely because the host of the banquet was also in a martial arts suit. Brandon stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, holding a glass of golden champagne. He raised his glass at Lu Qing and Yen Jika with a smile. He had black hair and brown eyes. He was tall and muscular, and his skin was close to bronze. He was full of power and pressure. Taking a sip of the champagne, Brandon laughed from afar. Are you going to give us an opening dance or an ending dance? As he spoke, he pointed at the open-air martial arts arena outside to prevent Lu Qing from misunderstanding. The place was brightly lit, as though it was daytime. Huge Roman-style stone pillars stood there. I don't have a problem with either. Lu Qing replied with a smile. Then let's do it now. I can't wait. Brandon smiled apologetically. The conversation between the two of them attracted the attention of the guests. Numerous gazes were cast on them, and they were all overflowing with interest. Lu Qing looked around and asked in a low voice, "Where's the referee?" Referee? Brandon shrugged his shoulders. I hate referees. A formal challenge requires a referee. Otherwise, I'd rather not accept it. Lu Qing expressed his opinion firmly. Brandon immediately showed an amused expression. As an outstanding martial artist, how can you rely on the protection of the referee? Don't tell me that you're scared and cowardly now that you're away from the referee. Have you forgotten that fighting is an art used on the battlefield? Have you forgotten the boiling blood and the courage of a man? Only those who are used to fighting without any protection are real men and real warriors. If you admit that you're a boy crying in his mother's arms and a shameful coward, then you can leave. Yen Jika was infuriated by his words. Her body trembled slightly. Let's go. Lu Qing pulled her, turned around calmly, and walked towards the door. If I hadn't experienced those few life and death battles, I would definitely be enraged. However, the more I experienced the feeling of walking on the edge of death, the less I want to take the initiative to try it. I'm not afraid, but that doesn't mean I like it. Since I started practicing martial arts, all the battles without a referee were either because I had absolute confidence or because I was forced into it. How can I take the initiative to jump into a dangerous situation? This is completely against my martial arts will. I'm not protecting my reputation. Yen Jika followed him blankly. She suddenly calmed down under the surprised gazes of the guests. She held Lu Qing's hand tighter. She felt that he was more courageous than accepting the challenge. All right. At this moment, Brandon clapped his hands and said with a sigh, "I can only force myself. Mr. Polk, please be the referee for today's battle." Lu Qing stopped in his tracks and turned around. He calmly met the gazes of those who were looking at him as if he was a coward. P.S. Don't waste the remaining monthly votes. Also, ask for a guaranteed monthly vote for July. You can vote after midnight. Chapter 526. The Jackson family held an important position in the entire Jaruga. There was no lack of experts attending their banquet. Even if Brandon didn't invite his father, Adrian, to be the referee to avoid suspicion, there were still other suitable candidates. Polk, who was not a member of the Msasi, came from another sect within the Jaruga Martial Arts Society that emphasized fist and kick. He was a veteran grandmaster of martial arts for more than 20 years. He had a light yellow beard that was almost white, and his eyes were dark blue. When he raised his head, there were no wrinkles. He sized up Lu Qing, who had turned around and slowly finished the champagne in his hand. He placed the glass on the waiter's tray and replied with a deep voice, "All right." He didn't say much, nor did he make any sarcastic remarks. He instantly turned into a neutral referee, exited from the side door, and walked to the center of the Roman stone pillars. "Please." Brandon bowed with a smile and made a gentlemanly invitation to Lu Qing. Lu Qing passed his phone to Yan Zhika and returned the gesture with a composed expression. He calmly followed the referee and entered the open-air arena. Brandon paused for a moment and suddenly moved his arms. His muscles, fascias, and joints emitted sounds of strength. The floor-to-ceiling windows behind him trembled slightly and shook continuously. "Good." One by one, the guests gave him a thumbs up. After the warm-up was over, Brandon walked out of the banquet hall with his heavy body and nimble footsteps like a human bear. He stood in front of Lu Qing and got into a boxing stance. The towering ancient stone pillars around them cut off the field of vision, making the venue desolate and spacious. The smile on Brandon's face gradually disappeared. His eyes seemed to be burning with a star-like radiance, brimming with a strong desire for battle. He locked his opponent's figure in the center of his pupils. When he said he didn't want a referee, it was his honest opinion and also a psychological tactic. If his opponent couldn't stand the sarcasm and chose to fight as a man, he would enter the environment he was most familiar with. His opponent would definitely be fearful of any unexpected accidents. If he was afraid of danger and insisted on not agreeing to a retro gladiator fight, he would feel dejected even with a referee. He would feel that he had lost a round before the match had even begun. It would be hard for him to show any courage or guts in front of him. Although Lu Cheng's reaction of leaving without hesitation was a little unexpected, it was still considered normal and didn't affect him. At this moment, Polk raised his right hand and thoughtfully reminded him, "Get ready." Immediately after, he waved his hand fiercely. His voice passed through the windows and into the hall, "Begin." Just as the referee finished his sentence, Lu Qing suddenly saw a blinding light erupting from the surface of Brandon's body. The light blinded his vision and he couldn't see anything clearly anymore. Awakening one's self-spirit was the starting point of the true inheritance of the Jaruga sect. It was also the key to becoming a combat apprentice. From this point onwards, the practitioner would follow a special training method to strengthen one's self-spirit step by step. It would complement and strengthen one's self-spirit with the strengthening of one's physical body, until the mutation of one's cells and genes occurred, giving rise to special, inhuman abilities. The Jaruga sect named these abilities differently from the mainstream. Some were called sea, some were called stars, and so on. What Adrian and Brandon had awakened were stars. They had the function of heaviness and the mysteries of light. At this moment, Brandon displayed the results of his cultivation in the past year without holding back. Star, radiant light. Lu Cheng's vision was blinded by white. All he could hear was the sound of his enemy breaking through the air barrier at high speed. Other than that, everything else was covered up. It was as though Lu Cheng had completely lost track of his enemy. Brandon appeared diagonally in front of Lu Cheng in a flash. Exerting strength in his legs, he turned his back halfway and swung his right arm out. Covered in specks of light, he executed a perfect right hook from the bottom to the top, aiming straight for his opponent's chin. With the heaviness of Star and his own strength, he was confident that he could forcefully break through any of his opponent's barriers other than Dan's stage explosion. Moreover, the Jaruga sex explosion was based on one's self-spirit. There was no need for the so-called chi and blood concentration, like the Chinese martial artists. Although it would result in the loss of the terrifying ability to unify one's force and absolute reaction, it would increase one's speed by a notch. Not only that, but it would also give one a stronger sense of danger. Each had its own advantages and disadvantages. Brandon's current plan was to use the initiative to his advantage and completely suppress his opponent, not giving him the chance to control the rhythm and avoid his weaknesses. Bam! Brandon's fist pierced through the air, causing goosebumps to form on Lu Cheng's chin. However, in a situation where he couldn't see or hear, he quickly raised his right arm and threw a sideways punch, accurately landing on the side of Brandon's uppercut. With a light strike, he deflected his opponent's thick arm, causing it to miss its target. Brandon had anticipated this. He immediately put his left fist into position and combined them. While Lu Cheng's sight and hearing had yet to recover, he launched a series of attacks. Crisp sounds rang out continuously. Not only did his combat techniques carry traces of Musashi, but he also seemed to incorporate the characteristics of Miluo, Nanjing, and other countries. His knee strikes and low kicks were at the peak of perfection, effectively making up for the gaps in his punches. Bam! 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 Brandon's punches alternated between hooks and swings. Sometimes they were straight, and sometimes they were pointed. Sparks of light scattered, illuminating the crystals on Lu Cheng's hands, arms, and legs. During this process, he slightly stimulated his own spirit, causing his muscles and tendons to tremble. He completed a low-intensity outburst. His punches were heavy, and his strength surged. His attacks were tightly connected, and his rhythm was extremely fast. Lu Cheng couldn't find an opportunity to use force concentration. He could only use ice spirit to block and take a step back. In order not to associate him with the Deliverman, and to effectively familiarize himself with his gains from last year, he planned to use Emperor Yen force sparingly in official events in America. He planned to use it as a surprise attack at a critical moment. Bam! 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 Lu Cheng swung his arm and threw a punch. His Zen undersea tremor, and his leg bent low kick. He blocked 3 consecutive attacks and took 3 consecutive steps back. Every step left a clear crack on the stone floor. The guests watching the battle through the floor-to-ceiling windows relaxed as they sipped on their champagne. Yenjika held a glass of plain water. There wasn't any worry on her face. She and Lu Cheng had discussed the current situation many times last night and during the day. As expected, after taking 2 more steps back and almost crashing into a Roman stone pillar, Lu Cheng suddenly advanced instead of retreating. He jumped half a step and threw a quick punch at his opponent's lower abdomen. Brandon's fist was shrouded in starlight. It looked like he was wearing a practice glove. He swung his arm and blocked his opponent's attack with a bang. Boom! The sound of rolling thunder reverberated in all directions. Both of them, who seemed to have frozen momentarily from the collision of their fists, shook at the same time. Their radiance turned white and turned into frost that splashed outwards. They were evenly matched. Lu Cheng had turned the tables by using 24 blizzard strikes consecutively. Even without using force concentration, he was able to block his opponent's low-intensity outburst attack. Seeing this, Brandon, whose body was starting to stiffen from the cold, immediately changed. He stimulated his own spirit, connecting his muscles and blood, and propping up his skin and tendons. His body suddenly enlarged. He raised his thicker right arm high and turned it into a terrifying giant sword. Mixed with heavy starlight, he chopped down at Lu Cheng's head. The ferocity of the attack seemed to be able to cut through everything. Adrian was a veteran grandmaster of martial arts who was famous for using great swords. As his son, although Brandon disdained to rely on weapons, he had integrated swordsmanship and the corresponding use of stars into his punches and kicks. It had become his favorite way of attacking when he was in a frenzy. Before the great sword arrived, Lu Cheng's hair stood on end. Without hesitation, he circulated his qi and blood, stimulating the corresponding parts of his body. His muscles bulged, and his tendons protruded. Simplified fighting formula. The instant expansion stirred up the airflow in the surroundings. Together with the punch flew up into the sky and slammed into Brandon's arm. Boom! Transparent ripples spread rapidly. Cracks spread under Lu Cheng's feet. Brandon's arm, which had transformed into a sword, rebounded, causing his body to swing backwards. His qi and blood circulated again. Stimulated again, Lu Cheng took half a step forward expressionlessly. He clenched his fist and punched straight at his chest. The intertwining greenish-black muscles were filled with explosive power. So fast. Brandon was shocked. He didn't care that the frenzy wasn't over yet. He raised his left arm and swung the greatsword horizontally. It looked ordinary, but it was filled with accumulated strength. Bam! Flesh and blood collided. There was a dent, and the bones were slightly deformed. However, they immediately reverted to their original form. Brandon held his breath as he felt the majestic and terrifying impact. He was experienced. With a twist of his waist, he shot backwards like lightning and crashed into a Roman pillar. Stone chips flew everywhere, and the thick pillar swayed. It almost fell or broke. Lu Cheng wouldn't let this opportunity go. He outlined the attainment formula and once again used his qi and blood to stimulate his body, cutting down on the intermediate steps. With just a step, he closed in on his enemy. At this moment, Brandon's face lit up with excitement. The surface of his body shone again, suppressing the surrounding streetlights and illuminating the entire open-air arena. In the abnormal brilliance, silhouettes appeared one after another. They all looked like Brandon. They pounced on Lu Cheng from all directions, forcing him to react with absolute reaction. Jaruga's star's technique, illusory light. The Roman pillars in the arena weren't there to look good or to show taste. Their position effectively affected reflection and refraction, making the illusory light stronger and closer to reality. To Brandon, the other 7 silhouettes were formed by light energy. They could also cause damage. They weren't fake. P.S. Since everyone doesn't like the old rules, I'll update first. Also, I'd like to thank everyone. Although the June update didn't decrease, it was still unstable. Martial arts actually made it into the top 10 monthly votes for the first time, ranking 9th. With the increasing number of books in circulation, it wasn't easy at all. Also, please guarantee the monthly votes. Chapter 527. In the brightly lit arena, a total of 7 identical figures pounced at Lu Cheng. All of them stirred up a gust of wind, creating a stimulus that was hard to distinguish. Of course, it was easy to tell because the Roman pillar that Brandon had crashed into was still shaking slightly. The corresponding figure was clear and distinct. However, Lu Cheng took a step to the side, lowered his shoulders, and leaned to the side. Following that, he swung his right arm and threw a punch like a bullet towards the empty space. Bam! The sound of the collision shook the floor-to-ceiling windows in the hall. Suddenly, starlight-covered skin, bulging muscles, and strong knuckles appeared in front of Lu Cheng's frosty right fist. At some point in time, Brandon had bizarrely changed his position, leaving behind an illusion beside the Roman pillar where he was previously standing. There were a total of 7 figures, all of which were illusions. His real body had long gone into hiding. He wanted to take advantage of the chaos to launch a surprise attack and deal a fatal blow to his opponent. For most of the inhuman experts, it was indeed a threat. If Lu Cheng's ice mirror hadn't made the breakthrough and was still at the same level as before, he would have been caught in a fluster. One moment of carelessness and he would have been caught in the crossfire. But right now, his consciousness was high up in the sky as a god 3 feet above his head. Using the ice mirror to reflect his surroundings, he keenly sensed the anomaly and made the first move, interrupting Brandon's ambush. Poof! 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 At the same time, the 7 Brandon figures formed by light energy pounced on Lu Cheng, triggering waves of blinding brilliance and flowing starlight. As Lu Qing took a step forward and struck diagonally, a thick layer of ice crystals had formed on the surface of his body. They were translucent, solid, and extraordinary. Under the burning and melting of the light, they either sizzled into water or vaporized instantly, forcefully resisting this round of attacks. If it wasn't for the improvement of his ice armor, he definitely wouldn't have chosen such a response. Moreover, the 7 figures came from different directions. Without the stacking of corrosion, he could naturally deal with them calmly, as immovable as a mountain. Amidst the explosion, as the 7 figures disappeared, Brandon's silhouette was quickly outlined. His left hand bounced back, swinging involuntarily as he felt an unbearable pain. His punch was interrupted and he was almost injured. The pain stimulated Brandon's soul, causing him to have a strong desire for violence. He was like a soldier whose eyes were bloodshot. When Brandon noticed that Lu Qing had weakened from the head-on clash just now, he flexed his back muscles without hesitation and delivered a heavy straight punch. Under the cover of such a ferocious attack, he stepped forward with his left foot and tripped Lu Cheng's legs, acting as both a fulcrum and a rope. This was the jutsu of the Jaruga sect. Brandon wanted to turn the battle into a ground fight. He would rely on the skillful coordination of his constellation ability to unleash various techniques to break the enemy's so-called listening skill and completely subdue him. When he kicked, Lu Qing took a step back. From the perspective of the guests in the hall, the two of them seemed to be performing a dance with tacit understanding. Brandon's kick missed, and his straight punch failed. He immediately turned sideways, lowered his back, and extended his right palm. He was going to use his well-practiced technique to throw his opponent to the ground. Lu Qing took another step back. It was as if he had known the enemy's plan in advance, so that his fall would fail awkwardly. Pa! Lu Qing shook his right shoulder and swung out his arm, tightening it from its softness. Then, like a whip, he struck towards the side of Brandon's neck. Brandon raised his arm, which glowed brilliantly, and assumed a defensive boxing stance. He tilted his head to the side, guarding against the second and third part of the enemy's attack. When he watched the video of the battle, the memory was still fresh in his mind. He still had a lingering fear. Bam! Brandon's arm swayed a little as he lashed out with the whip. It was as though countless dust particles were flying into the air. As expected, Lu Qing snapped his knuckles, aimed at the side of his face, and spread his fingers. Even though he was far away, he could imagine the enhancement Aurora would provide. With a whoosh, the tip of Lu Cheng's finger shot out streaks of crystal-clear cold light. They left his body like sharp arrows and headed straight for the enemy's temples and eyes. They were faster, more solid, and more ferocious than Aurora. They were like ice spirits. Brandon had guessed the beginning, but he didn't expect the ending. When he saw the sudden change, he was scared out of his wits. Cold sweat broke out on his back, and he felt as if electricity had passed through his pores. He instinctively shrunk his head and curled up his body. He felt the sound of the arrow elongating in his ears. The bone-piercing cold flew past his scalp and into the surface of an ancient Roman-style stone pillar. Lu Qing pulled back his chi and blood calmly and unleashed his Dan force. He turned, lifted his hips, tightened his trousers, and lashed out with his leg. Like a steel whip, he lashed out at the enemy who was facing him from the side. Brandon quickly stimulated his self-spirit. He quickly swung his arm, clenched his fist, and hammered down. He narrowly missed the whip kick. Amidst the loud bang, invisible waves rippled outwards. Brandon, who was built like a human bear, nimbly moved his waist and back muscles. Despite being at a disadvantage, he used the force to leap away, instantly widening the distance between them to more than 10 meters. Lu Qing concealed his attainment formula and followed up with a step. He retracted his chi and blood again and unleashed his force again. He wore a crystal-clear frost glove on his left fist, swinging it sideways. It was unusually heavy. Bam! After Brandon blocked the attack, he swung his right fist again. He used the same force concentration and ice spirit to hurt his opponent. Bam! 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 Lu Qing completed one explosion after another rhythmically. He swung his arms, swung his legs, and struck with his knees. Every attack was heavy and filled with coldness. Bam! 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 Faced with his opponent's precise footwork and attacks, Brandon was forced to use high-intensity explosive attacks to defend himself. He lost his advantage of being faster. After blocking more than a dozen attacks, he finally retreated. Every step he took created a cloud of dust, splinters, sand, and pebbles. It was like the battle scenes of the demigods recorded in many ancient books. Throughout this process, Brandon felt himself getting colder and colder. His gushing blood and beating heart couldn't completely alleviate this feeling. His body gradually stiffened and became more and more sluggish. Compared to the violent and ferocious Emperor Yen force, the Ice Spirit force had the advantage of erosion and lasting effect. Bam! Lu Cheng's fist turned into a hammer and smashed downwards, hitting Brandon's raised fist. The impact made him stagger backwards. His hair was wet, and the droplets of sweat turned into white frost when they fell to the ground. Unwilling to wait for his death, Brandon roared. He couldn't care less about anything else. He stimulated his self-spirit and gathered the light energy in his body in an attempt to buy himself a chance to take a breather and find a way to turn the tables around. While he stimulated himself, Lu Qing seemed to have sensed it. He held his qi and blood in time. However, he didn't activate his Dan force immediately as usual. Instead, after a few moments of equilibrium, he seemed to have lost his temperature and blood, turning into an ice-cold corpse. The heaviness in his lower abdomen was still shrinking and moving away. This gave Brandon a chance to build up his strength. A smile of anticipation appeared on his face. He raised his left hand to protect his head and chest. Swinging his right fist, he struck out quickly and heavily. All the star brilliance gathered at a single point in front of him. Restriction of stars, light energy focus. Bam! At this moment, Lu Cheng's Dan force erupted uncontrollably. He was filled with blood again and regained his body temperature. He pulled his right arm and punched his chest, hitting the condensed star brilliance and glowing skin. Boom! Light exploded, illuminating the floor-to-ceiling windows in the hall. Yen Zhika bit her lips lightly, waiting for the figure to appear. The other guests forgot to drink, holding their glasses and watching intently. The exaggerated light disappeared in a flash, as though it was buried and devoured by something. Lu Cheng's figure appeared first, far away from his previous position. His right sleeve was in tatters, like an exploded bamboo. His skin was slightly charred and shrouded in white mist. Seeing his sorry appearance, the guests were about to applaud, but they soon noticed that Brandon was standing there in a daze. He was still protecting his face with his left fist and punching with his right fist. From his fingertips to his hair, he was covered in a layer of glittering crystals, as if he had been frozen. Water droplets dripped down rapidly, and the layer of ice melted rapidly. Lu Qing circulated his qi and blood to stimulate his body parts. With a push of his feet, he pounced in front of Brandon again. Then, he stretched his back, swung his arm, and smashed his fist down. Bam! The air barrier exploded. Brandon, who had just been freed from the ice, threw out a punch slowly in an attempt to defend himself. However, he was sent flying backwards, breaking a Roman pillar with a loud bang. Lu Qing slid forward again. Without any change in expression, he threw out his left fist and smashed it on his opponent's forehead. He didn't hold back. If he was hit like that, even a man made of iron would have his head blown off. Pain came from his back, and his limbs were sluggish. Brandon felt a stab in between his eyebrows. All he could see was Lu Cheng's fist, which was getting bigger and bigger, filling up his entire vision. At that moment, he clearly felt the taste of death. He couldn't help but tremble. He wanted to retreat, but he couldn't do so. Just as he was at his most desperate, a hand reached over. It glowed with a blue luster and held Lu Cheng's fist firmly. The referee, Poke, had made his move, announcing the result of the match. Brandon lost. Lu Qing won. Lu Qing retracted his fist, saluted, and walked towards the side door with a smile. He walked towards Yen Jika, who was walking towards him. Phew. Brandon was still sitting on the pile of broken rocks, enjoying the beauty of being alive. He wasn't an idiot. He understood that Lu Cheng's, not holding back, at the end was a small proof. After entering the banquet hall, Lu Cheng and Yen Jika exchanged glances. They whispered in unison, "Let's go." Wouldn't it be asking for a snub to stay at Brandon's banquet after winning? In ancient times, that would be asking for a beating. When the words entered their ears, the couple couldn't help but laugh. They walked towards the door hand in hand. No one tried to stop them. The room was silent. Outside the door, the night sky was dark. The evening breeze blew gently. Lu Cheng and Yen Jika walked further and further towards the car park. Only their soft Chinese voice could be heard. "You waited until the light energy focused before you tried that move of yours. Was it to better experience the characteristics of the Jaruga sect?" "Yeah. I keep feeling that this style is a little familiar. Maybe I was infected by the priest. P.S. I'm done with my work. Begging for monthly votes." Chapter 528. The river was illuminated by the starlight, and the coldness was bone-chilling. The Connecticut city at the end of January had a different kind of beauty. After Yen Jika drove out of Brandon's manor, she slowed down the car and wandered in the peaceful night, creating a feeling of leisure and relaxation. "There aren't many cars here. Let me teach you how to drive. It's an automatic transmission, super easy to learn," she suggested with great interest. "Sure," Lu Qing answered without hesitation. He unbuckled his seatbelt and walked to the other door. With his control of his body, coordination of his limbs, and reflexes, it shouldn't be hard for him to learn how to drive, right? He waited for the girl to get into the passenger seat before he got into the driver's seat, fastened his seatbelt, and closed the door. "Don't you feel awkward?" Yen Jika turned her head and asked with a smile. "A little." Lu Qing answered honestly. "So awkward. We're of different heights and body types. The most suitable seat height and distance are definitely different too. Lu Qing, what's the difference between you wearing my t-shirt like this?" Yen Jika pointed out the problem with her bright eyes and taught Lu Qing how to adjust his seat and rearview mirror. After that, she excitedly introduced the application of brakes, accelerator, steering wheel, lights, gearbox lever, handbrake, and so on. The automatic transmission was relatively easy. Lu Cheng was on the road in no time. He maintained a stable speed and cautiously operated ice mirror to eliminate his nervousness and anxiety. Yen Jika, who had tasted the taste of being a coach again, was satisfied. She praised herself a little and casually picked up her phone to surf the web. "Hey, there's another to deliver man in the Big Apple," she exclaimed softly and said cheerfully. "How many imitators are there?" Lu Qing asked, amused. His eyes were still looking straight ahead. The superhero culture in the United States of America really spread everywhere and had a far-reaching impact. 1, 2, 6, 7. Yen Jika rolled her eyes and counted with her fingers. "About 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Before Lu Qing could point out that it was no different from not saying anything, she cleverly changed the topic. "This is good news for you." "Yeah." Lu Qing nodded casually. Otherwise, most superheroes would have been exposed long ago. In the past few months, there had been people imitating the Deliverman in Big Apple, Luo City, and other places to punish criminals. Some of them were crudely seen through, while others imitated the Deliverman perfectly. In terms of style and capability, the Deliverman was believed to be the work of the Deliverman again. It was said that a bureau of the Federation had combined the two cases and expanded the scope of the investigation. It was suspected that the Deliverman was not in Connecticut before and after the two incidents in Connecticut. For a veteran grandmaster of combat, this was entirely possible, and there were precedents in the past. Truth and falsehood were the active soil of American superheroes. Different countries had different situations. Using one's own country to trick another country would often lead to a huge mistake. Smith had foreseen this and analyzed it in detail for himself. Whether it was in the United States or Hua Nation, the most difficult case to solve was the same. That was, someone came to a foreign land on a whim and casually killed a passerby who had nothing to do with them. Moreover, there were no clues such as fingerprints, DNA, and surveillance cameras left behind. Then, the investigators could only rely on their luck to find a needle in a haystack. The police should not be underestimated, nor should they be worshipped. Unsolved cases related to American superheroes were too numerous to mention. The clown reappears in Big Apple, another tragic murder case. Yenjika read the news headline and sighed. Compared to that place, Connecticut's security is worth 5 stars. Although there were gangs and dangerous criminals here, they were relatively few in number. Also, none of them had antisocial personalities and would not provoke the government. It can't be helped. After all, it's the most prosperous city in America. Physical invulnerability experts and inhuman experts like to gather there. Once the number of experts increases, it's normal to have a few scumbags and perverts. Haven't there been experts who took revenge on society in places like Beijing, Huahai, Huacheng, and Mosheng? Haven't there been vicious cases with huge impact that went unsolved? Don't we, the ice god sect in Shushan study, occasionally hand over disciples to the judicial authorities? Lu Qing comforted his wife. As the financial center of America, Connecticut was a big city with a high ranking. It had the super sect Chiruga, a cult that could go against it, and a government that maintained stability. There were close to 10 physical invulnerability experts, not to mention the number of inhumans. So far, only 2 dangerous criminals had appeared, which showed that the security was good. Of course, it was only limited to certain areas. Similarly, places like Beijing, Huahai, and Mosheng were also places where experts gathered. It was just that the control was stricter, so there weren't many vicious cases. To the residents of Connecticut or the Big Apple, super criminals weren't the biggest threat. In modern society, once exposed, they would definitely be arrested and dealt with. Such perverted murderers wouldn't dare to commit crimes openly. They would either be like Mizuski, who relied on seduction and gradual corruption, or like the butcher, who chose places with insufficient surveillance resources. As long as they didn't go to places they weren't supposed to and could resist the temptation, the danger level was actually very low. Of course, after Lu Cheng's cleanup, it was close to 0. To the average person, the biggest threat was terrorists, people who wanted to take revenge on society, and newbies who thought they could easily escape surveillance. Yenjika's own strength was more than enough to deal with them, not to mention she had a full-time bodyguard. Auntie Do, I'm just saying I live a life in the classroom, library, home, and supermarket every day. I almost never attend parties or gatherings. Who would target me for no reason? As Yenjika spoke, she suddenly frowned and looked ahead. After pausing for a moment, she said, Cheng, do you not know the way? Seems like we're driving the wrong way, Lu Cheng answered calmly. Yeah, it's my first time here. How could I know the way? Besides, who would remember the way in a car? So self-righteous. Yenjika was stunned for a few seconds. When did we go the wrong way? We should have turned left at the intersection with the bridge. We passed that intersection before you mentioned the clown. Lu Qing thought for a moment and said with a strange expression. When I was counting how many delivery men? Yenjika asked casually as she entered the map and planned to navigate. No, it was even earlier. Lu Qing answered honestly. When I said the delivery men appeared in the Big Apple again? Yenjika blinked. Even earlier. Lu Qing reminded her with a trembling expression. Even earlier? Isn't that when I teach you how to drive? Yenjika laughed out loud. If she had an emoji pack, she would definitely choose to slam the table. Even earlier. Lu Qing drove with a solemn expression. Earlier? Then I'm not driving. Yenjika paused and thought for a moment. She raised her phone and cheered. Just treat it as a drive. Isn't that great? But I'm hungry. Lu Qing nodded his head silently. In the riverside manner, Brandon pulled himself together and chatted with the guests. Although he didn't know that victory and defeat are common in war, his performance was very apparent. After the formalities, he used an excuse to change and went to the second floor. He saw his father, Adrian, standing at the balcony at the end of the corridor, looking at the flowing water. "How do you feel?" Adrian turned around and asked. Brandon took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. "Stronger than me." Adrian nodded slightly and added calmly, "And he looks like he's experimenting and practicing the new ice sec technique." Brandon didn't want to admit it, but he answered honestly. "Yes." A smile appeared on Adrian's face as he spoke calmly. "You have to remember that there aren't many people who can become a martial artist's lifelong enemy. Among them, there are bound to be arrogance and conceit." February 1st, Sunday afternoon. Lu Cheng, who had completed his daily training, and Yenjika, who had finished her homework, drove to the biggest supermarket nearby to buy ingredients and daily necessities for the Chinese New Year. After filling up 2 cars, they stopped at the cashier and took out the items one by one to pay for them. Yenjika watched as her husband busied himself. She helped him from time to time, looking relaxed and comfortable. She even started thinking about the dishes for their reunion dinner. At that moment, she saw Lu Cheng take out 6 boxes with a calm expression and pass them to the cashier. She didn't know how many boxes of condoms they contained. When did he take them? How can he just buy them like that? Yenjika was stunned. Her cheeks were burning. She quickly turned her head to the side and pretended not to know the guy in front of her. Why couldn't he just be like before and come here to buy it on his own? After paying the bill and exiting the supermarket, Yenjika glared at Lu Cheng in embarrassment. "You're getting better at it." "What?" Lu Cheng was confused. That. Yenjika pointed at the boxes on top. Lu Cheng broke into laughter and answered calmly, "It's not my first time. Besides, it's normal for a married man with a wife to buy condoms. What's there to be embarrassed about?" "That's not what you said before. You said you were so embarrassed when you bought condoms for the first time." Yenjika, sadly, realized that a man's skin was the most thick-skinned thing. After joking around for a while, they put their spoils of war into the car. Just as Yenjika was about to start the engine, her phone rang. She had an incoming call. After a while, she pressed down on the receiver and looked at Lu Cheng. "The consulate and the International Student Union want to organize a celebration for the Chinese New Year. Do you want to join? Chinese New Year is my birthday too." Lu Cheng took the initiative to express his opinion. "Of course, it's just the 2 of us." Yenjika smiled and didn't say anything else. She rejected the invitation. Chapter 529. After returning home from the supermarket, Lu Cheng and Yenjika started to get busy. They first planned the menu for the next 2 days and then put on a show like Mandarin duck chopping pork with 2 knives. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Yenjika carefully put the pork belly mixed with eggs, starch and other things into the wok and fried it until it was golden. She then took it out and threw it into the bowl beside her. Then, a hand filled with frost reached out like lightning and grabbed the pork belly. She took 2 bites and felt the fragrance and tenderness of the meat. "It's delicious," Lu Cheng said vaguely. He then put the remaining half of the piece in front of the girl's mouth. "Try it." This was the must-have crispy pork in Shushan. The selection of ingredients, and cooking method were slightly different from other places. It was more tender and smooth, but also easier to get tired of. Even with Lu Cheng's appetite, it was difficult to eat more than 10 pieces in a row. He had to eat other food to neutralize it. Crispy pork was the most delicious when it was just out of the pot. When his family was not very rich, he would stay by the stove and eat every piece until his mouth was full of oil and his stomach was full and he felt disgusted. Then he left reluctantly. Although Yenjika didn't like greasy food, she didn't dislike the freshly fried crispy pork at all. However, she could only eat 2 pieces at most. The alluring aroma and delicious taste were one of the New Year's delicacies in her hometown. After the first meal, the crispy pork could be kept in the refrigerator for a long time. Every time Lu Cheng's mother, Chi Fong, made tofu and vegetable soup, she liked to add a few pieces of crispy pork and add some oil and gas to make it more fragrant. At that time, the crispy pork was not as greasy as before. Yenjika opened her mouth slightly and took a bite of the crispy pork Lu Cheng handed to her. She chewed a little and smiled, praising herself, "It's really good. I can do this with just a recipe and a few words from Empress Dowager. Please call me Chef Yen." She was more confident and put another piece of pork belly into the pot. Lu Cheng quickly blocked the splashing oil droplets with his palm and eliminated all hidden dangers. They cooked and tasted and cooked. When they filled the table with dishes, they were already half full. "I'm so tired. I don't want to cook unless it's a holiday." Yenjika stretched her arms and said half proudly and half with emotion. Lu Cheng immediately reached out his hand and helped her massage. He echoed with a smile and said, "That's right. In the future, we'll hire an auntie who knows how to cook. When we feel like it, we'll make it ourselves. But it's not bad to see you busying around and finding opportunities to eat from time to time." Yenjika lifted the glass of juice and extended it to Lu Cheng. Her dimples were outlined as she said with a sweet smile, "This is our first big meal for ourselves. To Chef Yen and Chef Lu." Lu Cheng also picked up his glass. In Xing province, Dun Zi was the sous chef in charge of cutting and garnishing vegetables. Ding dang. The wine glasses clinked and the water swirled. The young couple each took a sip. They felt that the surroundings were very quiet and the light was very soft. Their hearts were very warm. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Lu Cheng took on the role of the main force. Under the disturbance of Yenjika, who seemed to be drunk from drinking fruit juice, he managed to clean up the dining room and kitchen. Back on the second floor, the two lay on the bed very close to each other and chatted endlessly. Occasionally, they would surf the internet to find something to talk about. Even time seemed to slow down. Lu Cheng's cell phone rang from time to time. They were all congratulatory messages for his birthday. Based on the reality that China was 12 or 13 hours earlier, he had entered the first day of his 21st birthday in China. However, the young couple was still, stubbornly, waiting for the arrival of midnight in Connecticut. At 11:30, Yenjika suddenly stretched out her leg and nudged Lu Cheng. "Cheng, you go take a shower first. It's almost 12. I'll go after that." Lu Cheng answered with a little confusion. Go, take a shower first. You stink." Yenjika used both hands and feet to drive him out of the bed with an itchy expression on her face. Is this the rhythm of a surprise gift? Lu Cheng's heart skipped a beat. He deeply felt that he was really unromantic just now. Okay. He pretended to be helpless and slow. He took a change of clothes and walked out of the room to the bathroom. After 2 steps, his ears moved slightly. He heard the sound of the door closing and locking. That's it. Lu Cheng entered the bathroom with a face full of joy. He rubbed left and right, slowed down the pace, and hummed a song. 20 minutes later, he walked out of the bathroom refreshed and returned to the bedroom door. He stretched out his hand and twisted the doorknob, but it didn't move an inch. Ku. He knocked on the door and called in a confused tone. Wait a little longer, wait a little longer. The girl's voice sounded slightly urgent. Okay. Lu Cheng smiled to himself and waited patiently. He silently counted the time and scattered his thoughts, guessing what kind of gift he was about to receive. At 11:59, he heard the sound of the lock being unlocked and Yenjika taking a few steps back. Come in. The girl's voice was a little tense. Okay. Lu Cheng took a breath and reached for the doorknob. He gently twisted it and pushed the door open. The lights in the room were off. The curtains were drawn, and the dim yellow candlelight was rippling. In the quiet darkness, Yenjika wore a white fluttering veil and a wedding dress that outlined her beautiful curves. The layers of lace were faintly discernible, making her look as pure and beautiful as an angel descending from heaven. At this moment, she was holding a homemade cream cake in her hands. There were 21 candles on the cake, and the light from the candles flickered like a soul. Seeing Lu Cheng's stunned face, the girl was a little embarrassed and forgot to say happy birthday. She raised her chin and said, "I ordered the dress. We haven't taken wedding photos yet." "Yeah." Lu Cheng replied with lingering eyes. Yenjika pursed her lips and smiled. She looked at the ceiling and said, "Then I'll invite you to take the photos tomorrow. There's no class this afternoon. We'll go to Left Lake Pier, Riverside Park, Wilson Square, Adams Garden, and Westminster Building." "Yes, we'll take the photos ourselves." "You've already prepared the strategy?" Lu Cheng seemed to come back to himself and asked subconsciously. "Shouldn't this kind of thing be done by me?" "Of course," Yenjika's voice rose at the end. She replied with a cheerful expression, "This is your birthday present." "Yes, I ordered a full suit for you, including a shirt, vest, bow tie, belt, shoes. When we go back to China during the summer vacation, we'll make a Han costume for the second set. Here, try it on." She turned around and walked to the wardrobe as if she was going to take out the suit that belonged to Lu Cheng. However, before she could take a step forward, an arm wrapped around her waist. A strong body pressed against her back, and a slightly hot breath brushed past her ear. "Then we can try it on tomorrow," Lu Cheng said in a low voice. "Sure enough. You big pervert." Yenjika smiled slyly. She turned around as if she had been prepared. She raised the cake in her hand and was about to slap it in the face of the rogue to wish him a happy birthday. Her turning around and the words of trying on the dress were all targeted traps. Lu Cheng had already sensed the girl's intention. He shook his head in amusement and chose not to dodge. Seeing this, Yenjika slowed down her movements and stopped the cake. She muttered, "Can't waste food." After that, she smiled widely and looked into Lu Cheng's eyes with watery eyes. She said in a low voice, "Cheng, happy birthday." Lu Cheng raised his eyebrows and snorted. Yenjika bit her lips and said again with shame and anger in her eyes, "Hubby, happy birthday, huff." Lu Cheng reached out his right hand and hugged his wife. He blew out the candles with his breath. The room was dark with only a little light coming in from outside the window. "Be careful of my clothes." Her voice echoed in the room. Lu Cheng completely forgot to savor the fact that he was 1 year older. The next morning, Yenjika brushed her teeth angrily. She watched the energetic Lu Cheng finish his training and enter the bathroom to wash off the sweat on his body. He was full of satisfaction. "I was just being polite. I said it's your birthday and you can do whatever you want. You actually took it seriously." "Humph, I'll have to tell you the truth later." "Why do you know so much?" "Someone is really diligent in this aspect. I wonder what kind of state he is in when I'm not around." While Yenjika was lost in her thoughts, they tidied themselves up and returned to the room. They started a video call with their parents and elders to congratulate them on the new year. First was Ji Mingyu, followed by the 2 elders of the Ji family and the Yen family. When Yenjika finished with her red eyes, Lu Cheng called her over to talk to his parents. "Mom, Dad, Ku is here." Lu Cheng reminded them with a smile. "Mom, Dad." Yenjika, who was a little absent-minded and a little sentimental, followed suit. Then she suddenly sobered up and blushed. Resisting the urge to turn around and run away, she murmured, "Uncle, Auntie." The 3 members of the Lu family all laughed heartily. Instead of making fun of this matter, they started to talk about other topics. Yenjika listened to them with a gentle smile. She reached her hand behind Lu Cheng's back and pinched him again and again. However, her heart softened and she didn't use any strength. In a cheerful atmosphere, the couple started a new day. First, they listened to lectures. Then, they went to the Left Lake Pier for dinner. They went on a date to take wedding photos. Although they weren't skillful enough, they were full of memories. These were not only stored in the camera but also in their minds. In the evening, the tired, only Yenjika, but excited couple returned home. They cooked a table full of New Year's Eve dishes and swept everything away like a hurricane. After that, they curled up together and waited for the midnight of Connecticut again. Yenjika fell into a deep sleep. Lu Qing turned his head and looked at her with a smile in his eyes. When it was close to dawn, he woke her up. He shook his left hand and sprinkled a sky full of sparkles. There was a little flame hidden in every sparkle. There was no exception. New Year's Eve. Firecrackers. Lu Qing shouted in a low voice. His face was full of smiles. In his mind flashed the upcoming National League in the professional circle he would join in the second half of the year. Yenjika looked at him in a daze. Her eyes were full of brilliance and brilliance. A new year, a new beginning. Only we are no longer alone. Chapter 530. For the next 10 days or so, Lu Qing, who had learned a lot from his match with Brandon, laid low. He didn't even look for grandmasters of martial arts or powerful spirit cultivators to spar during the weekend. Instead, he pondered seriously and made up for his mistakes bit by bit. Among them, his self-created lament of the Ice Queen was still a distance away from the harsh requirements of actual combat. If he hadn't completely suppressed Brandon, he might not have been able to use it in time. He had to experiment, modify and familiarize himself with it. Without relying on the suppression of the power of the Jin Dan, the lament of the Ice Queen was equivalent to severe warning. However, there was an internal and external difference. One froze one's mind, while the other froze one's body. Both had their own characteristics, mysteries, and advantages. Thoughts flashed through his mind. He leaned against a corner and looked at the classroom. While keeping an eye out for any accidents, he pondered over similar questions. At this moment, his phone suddenly vibrated twice. He picked it up and saw that it was a WeChat message from Smith. He used someone else's email account to contact Lu Qing for confidential information and then cleaned it up afterward. Normally, he would rely on Chinese communication tools. It was as though they had established a true friendship through daily contact. Lu, there's going to be an exciting movie today. If I hadn't been monitoring the vicinity of the Holy Top Church from afar, I wouldn't have noticed Pavel sneaking out during the busiest time of the day. It's almost Valentine's Day, so he might not be able to hold it in. Pavel, that perverted bishop who loves children and girls? Lu Qing asked a few questions out of curiosity. He roughly understood what Smith meant by exciting movie. The Deliverman's first two cases were the arrest of Joseph of the Jaruga sect and of righteous execution of Mizuki, who had a close relationship with spirit cultivators. The two spirit cultivators belonged to the Kagri group of the Jaruga sect. All in all, the higher-ups of the Jaruga sect couldn't help but suspect that the Deliverman was targeting them. Even though he had punished criminals a few more times, it was probably just a cover-up. As for who would target the Jaruga sect of the Nature sect, the Mission sect was definitely in the top 3 suspects. They had sufficient resources and ability to transfer mighty ones from other big cities to interfere with surveillance and erase suspicion. Furthermore, their holy light could easily disguise itself as a superpower of flames and explosions. After the Butcher incident, the Mission's quick response and relentless pursuit of public opinion made the higher-ups of the Jaruga sect feel that they had grasped the truth. As a warning and revenge, they set their sights on Pavel, who was also responsible for a case and angered the public. In the past few months, Smith had accidentally discovered that the Jaruga sect was paying attention to Pavel while the superheroes. Now that this disgusting and detestable bishop had taken the opportunity to sneak out during the superheroes' most, he didn't escape from the enemy. He couldn't help but be happy for him. Most importantly, he didn't the Deliverman. And of course, Lu. For him was Lu. Of by words. By for sure Smith, of the by. Of, to of course to of by. By bit. Wearing a bonnet, Pavel crossed the street and entered the Black Forest. His eyes wandered around, looking for prey and a relatively secluded spot. When he came to an open space filled with building debris, his eyes suddenly flashed. Everything turned white, like a person who was used to the dark suddenly looking straight at the noon sun. A figure jumped down from the top of the debris pile. Raising his right arm, he clenched his fist and swung it fiercely amidst the light. It was like a giant sword slashing, but also like a giant hammer smashing. Bam! A few stars around Pavel exploded, forming a strange, incomplete tree. With the guidance of the Lord, he accurately swung his fist and blocked the fatal attack. Bam, bam, bam. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Amidst the fierce fight, the open space trembled constantly, as if it was brewing anger. In the center, fireworks bloomed, brighter and brighter. The dark-skinned teenagers playing nearby were scared out of their wits. Some called the police, while others hid in their homes. Due to the slow dispatch of police from the slums, the attacker didn't seem to be anxious or worried at all. It's a pity that the surveillance cameras nearby are either broken or stolen. Holding his phone, Smith shook his head and sighed. He parked his car not far away and, under the cover of a pile of junk, enjoyed the dangerous battle. He even took a video and sent it to Lu Cheng for communication. Lu Cheng leaned against the wall and glanced at the screen from the corner of his eyes. He saw the outline of the holy light in the shape of a tree or a cross. He saw the condensed brilliance, the trajectory of both parties' punches, and their dodging and evasive maneuvers. The ice mirror appeared in his mind as he deduced and predicted what would happen next. A thought flashed through his mind. Looking at the classroom, Lu Cheng blindly typed a word and sent it to Smith. Jump. Smith picked up his phone and fell into a state of confusion. He didn't understand the true meaning of Lu. At this moment, Lu Cheng's second message followed. Jump. Jump. Smith was stunned at first, then subconsciously believed in authority. He pushed open the car door and threw himself to the side. With a roll, he hid behind a house. He saw a ball of fire flying from the battlefield, smashing through the front windshield of the car and smashing into the seat where he was sitting 10 seconds ago. Boom! A dull thud resounded, waves of fire splattered, and glass flew everywhere. Smith couldn't care less about the surveillance cameras. He felt fear and relief at the same time. Although such an attack couldn't kill him, it wasn't easy to bear either. Having an extremely dangerous friend wasn't necessarily a bad thing. After a brief moment of shock, he reported the incident to the Department of Homeland Security as an agent who happened to pass by. But by the time the reinforcements arrived, the battle was already over. With the appearance of a helper who seemed to be a spirit cultivator, the attacker finally finished off Pavel, destroyed the corpse and traces of the crime scene, and left. The government has to issue a warning to Jaruga and the church. They should be quiet for a long time after this. Smith sent a message to Lu Cheng as he reported the losses. As someone who leaned towards justice and law enforcement, he didn't hand over the video he took. It's best if people like Pavel are dead. On the way home after school, Yenjika listened to Lu Cheng's description of the incident while driving. Her eyes widened. You can already predict the development of the battle 20 seconds later? Provided there are no changes. Who knows what other tricks those two guys have up their sleeves? Lu Cheng smiled calmly. In other words, you're at most 60 to 70% sure. If there are any changes, wouldn't Spider's jump be in vain? Yenjika was half enlightened and half confused. Jumping won't kill you. Lu Cheng chuckled, not minding it at all. Spider lacks actual combat experience. It's not bad to do some vigorous exercise once in a while. Valentine's Day was also the second anniversary of Lu Cheng and Yenjika's relationship. The girl received a pair of resplendent earrings and a photo album. A photo album? Yenjika was surprised, happy, and confused. She took it and placed it on her lap. On the cover of the album was the words, "A gift from time," handwritten by someone. Handwriting, I won't comment on the handwriting. The girl chuckled and opened the album. The first page was of the exterior of the martial arts arena, the second page was of Weishui Lake, and the third page was of Long Bridge at night. Every page was a scene she was extremely familiar with. At the end of the page were the suspended glass bridges and other sights they had experienced before. "You've been there before?" Yenjika looked up and asked in surprise and delight. "Before you went abroad, didn't you especially like to take photos to record the things we experienced together?" "I wanted to make up for the earlier ones. Although we're not in the photos, it can be our background now," Lu Qing explained with a smile. Yenjika's eyes lit up. She lowered her head and stroked the surface of the photo. Her dimples were shallow. "Your photography skills are a little bad, but since you put in so much effort, I'll reluctantly accept it." "Do you like it?" Lu Qing asked with a smile. Yenjika rolled her eyes and glared at him. She turned her head to the side and answered softly, "I like it very much." After that, she changed the topic and showed a nostalgic expression. "I kind of miss the cafeteria of Songqing University. I still remember the shredded pork with fish with shredded onions and the boiled meat slices with a spoon of boiling oil. It was so tender." The dishes in Songqing University's cafeteria were not bad, especially the shredded pork with fish with shredded pork. It was a dish that Lu Qing and Yenjika couldn't stop praising. It wasn't worse than some of the time-honored restaurants in Xing province. The only problem is that there are too many fish in Weishui Lake. Most of the dishes in the cafeteria are fish. Lu Qing complained and then recalled the food. The more they thought about it, the more hungry they became. At the end of the conversation, Yenjika touched her stomach, which was still a little painful because of her period, and looked at Lu Qing with grievance. "Qing, I just checked Weibo and saw a person's nickname is Country Bumpkin." "And then?" Lu Qing asked in confusion. "And then I want to eat buns." Yenjika covered her face with her hands. After Valentine's Day, Lu Qing waited for Aunt Du to call off her leave. He carried his luggage and boarded the flight back to China. The national competition was in a little more than a month. P.S. Looking for recommendation tickets on Monday, monthly tickets. Chapter 531. Lu Qing arrived in Songqing 3 hours later than expected. By the time he returned to campus, it was dinner time. The entire dormitory was empty, without a single person in it. He put down his backpack and leisurely went to the cafeteria. He ordered a series of dishes such as shredded pork with garlic sauce and boiled pork slices. He placed them neatly, took a picture, and sent it to Yenjika. After eating to his heart's content but alone, he walked in the direction of the martial arts club to digest. The setting sun shone on the Weishui Lake as if it was plated with a layer of golden red. As he approached the stadium, Lu Qing suddenly saw a familiar figure walking out. It was Li Mao, who was in the second semester of his senior year, wearing a thin turtleneck sweater and a casual jacket. "Hi, senior brother Li Mao. Extra training?" He took the initiative to greet him. Li Mao answered with a hearty smile, "No, I've been training all morning. If I come again, I'll be injured. I just finalized the offer and signed a 3-party agreement. I'm a little bit... well, how do I put it? Anyway, I just want to come and have a look." As he spoke, he couldn't help but sigh. "Finalized? Weren't you hesitating before?" Lu Qing didn't continue the sad topic. He changed the topic to something happy. "Yes, I'm going to the capital. I'll take the chance while I'm still young." Li Mao's face showed some complacency, and then he laughed at himself. "After a few years, when I can't afford a house in the capital, I'll take the money I saved and go back to my hometown, open a martial arts club, and get married." He had the strength of a top professional 9th pin fighter, and his professional grades were above average. He was quite popular with the companies that had come to the on-campus recruitment and had received several offers. "You're slandering the capital again," Lu Qing joked. Li Mao wanted to say something casually, but when he opened his mouth, he didn't say anything. Many memories and feelings surged in his heart, making it difficult for him to control himself. He took a breath and said with a smile and a sigh, "Qing, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Coach Shi, and all of you. If you hadn't given up on me and kept encouraging me, I would have left the martial arts club a long time ago and become a coward for the rest of my life." Once I encounter a challenging environment again, I will definitely be nervous, anxious, and perform abnormally. There's no need for that, Senior Li Mao. You have to work hard to overcome your inner demons in order to walk out of it. We're only responsible for cheering you on. Lu Qing didn't take the credit for himself and waved his hand with a smile. Li Mao couldn't help but laugh. Then, he let out a long sigh. 2 years ago, I never even dreamed that I would become a top professional ninth pin fighter and lift the national championship trophy. These 2 years have been like a dream. After sighing for a while, he changed the topic and talked about the new national competition in April. I still haven't understood the meaning of withdraw. It's the same for Talker and Deng Yang. When the time comes, you don't have to consider me in the competition. Give the freshmen more chances to temper themselves. Don't worry about the Dan stage. Think about it, Lin K was already a professional ninth pin fighter when he entered the school. He only officially broke through at the end of his freshman year. You guys have only been training for less than a year. What's the hurry? Do you think you're more talented than Lin K? Do you think you're more hardworking than him? Lu Qing reminded Li Mao not to be so anxious. Going from a professional ninth pin fighter to a Dan stage in 1 year was enough to be a Heavenly Son candidate. As for his Dan stage in half a year, others couldn't compare to him because he had a cheating device. Li Mao nodded slowly and said with a self-deprecating smile, "That's right. After hearing what you said, we still have a long way to go. Sigh, we've been working hard to make it to the national competition and share your burden. That's not necessary. Our goal this year is to have no goal." Lu Qing laughed and described the actual situation. Relax. It's normal to take 3 to 5 years to go from a top professional ninth pin fighter to a Dan stage. 8 to 10 years isn't considered long. Many people can't even reach the threshold after 10 to 20 years. They can only watch their chi and blood deteriorate and lose hope. This kind of thing can't depend on a person or a special case. Look at me and Lin Quebec. You have to look at the statistics. Hiss. Li Mao sucked in a breath of cold air. He knew it was difficult to reach the Dan stage, but he didn't know how difficult it was. He only saw his teammates achieve it in 1.5 years. He also saw that Shanbei, Huahai, and Capital Martial Arts clubs didn't lack new breakthroughs. Fortunately, I didn't focus on martial arts. Li Mao sighed. Then I'll set a limit of 10 years, no, 5 years. I'll lose my drive if I stay too long. Speaking of this, he asked curiously, "Cheng, how many Dan stage fighters do you think our martial arts club will have in the next 2 years?" Deng Yang is relatively stable. At most 1 year, at least half a year. As for the others, not including our junior brothers and sisters next year, we can have at most 2 Dan stage fighters. It's not surprising if one doesn't make it. In fact, the probability is quite high. Lu Qing knew Li Mao's temperament and frankly stated his judgment. This was a university martial arts club, not a top force or an advanced martial arts school where many talents gathered. Li Mao listened seriously and didn't mention this matter again. He chatted with Lu Qing about the recent situation of the martial arts club. At the end of the conversation, he suddenly laughed bitterly. "Suddenly, I don't want to graduate. I want to stay in university like this." Hearing this, Lu Qing suddenly had many feelings. Yes, these 2 years were so beautiful and memorable. He couldn't bear to leave. Although his heart was in turmoil, he still followed the characteristics of the talker and said, "Senior brother Li Mao, you have to think carefully. You will continue to not have a girlfriend in university." Li Mao was stunned and couldn't say anything. He could only wave his hand and say goodbye with clenched teeth. Really, do I have to make these 2 men cry? Looking at Li Mao's back, Lu Qing complained about him and himself. Then he turned around and walked back to the dormitory. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Kai Xiaoming sitting on the simple sofa in the living room. He was playing with his phone while the TV was on. When he heard the commotion, he raised his head and exclaimed, "Oh, you're back? I admire your perseverance and persistence." Before Lu Qing answered, Kai Zongming looked around and hesitated for a moment. Cheng, I want to ask you something. You have to be honest. I'll confess. I'll confess, okay? I ate the bag of beef jerky you put on the table. Lu Cheng raised his hand and laughed. With a kick of his heel, he closed the door. I knew it was you. Kai Zongming shook his finger in annoyance. After a while, he remembered that this wasn't what he wanted to ask about. He pondered for a few seconds and said, Cheng, how likely do you think I am to comprehend, withdraw, and enter the dance stage before graduation? Seeing that Kai Zongming was so serious, Lu Cheng gave up the joking answer. He thought seriously and said, it's hard to say. This kind of thing depends on talent, opportunity, and your own understanding. If you can find that strength to move yourself and fight for it, it's hard to say this semester, but there's still hope before your senior year. Actually, you don't have to rush. You're only half a year older than me. There's still more than 7 years to go before you're 29. Take one step at a time and your chances of entering the dance stage won't be low. It's as if you didn't say anything. Kai Zongming shook his head and smiled with a complicated expression. I remember you said that you pursued martial arts because you didn't want to repeat your father's life. You didn't want to return to a small city like a pool of stagnant water. You didn't want to be able to imagine what it's like to be 30 or 40 years old when you're only 23 or 24 years old. There won't be many changes. You should seriously ponder about this feeling, this impulse, and see if you can draw strength from it. Hearing this, Kai Zongming suddenly leaned back on the sofa and closed his eyes. He said in an ambiguous tone, during Chinese New Year, my father had a heart attack and almost couldn't be saved. The doctor said that he was too tired and overworked. He had to take good care of himself in the future. After such an incident, his body collapsed a lot. The company is not only my family's property, but also the livelihood of many relatives on both sides. It's impossible to sell it just like that. Even if we find a professional manager, he might not be able to control those guys. Hey, those guys, if I can't reach the dance stage before graduation, I don't think I can say it in front of my parents as a professional ninth pin drifting in the capital. He described it calmly without revealing any emotion, making it impossible for Lu Qing to comfort him. He could only pat little Ming on the shoulder and say, so, work hard. At times like this, the strong have to change their fate. F***ck off. Can't you be more serious? Kai Zongming couldn't help but laugh. He was in a better state and didn't talk about what happened just now. He thought about it and said, I probably don't have much hope of reaching the dance stage this semester. I can only rely on you in the national competition. If you can beat Peng Liyun and Fang Zhirong, Little Yang and I can definitely beat that explosion maniac together. Lu Cheng was stunned for a moment. The corner of his mouth twitched. You really think highly of me. If you can exhaust most of Fang Zhirong's strength, we can also fight. Kai Zongming took a step back. I'm not the reincarnation of Buddha. Whether I can beat priest or not is still uncertain, let alone challenge Fang Zhirong. Lu Cheng answered self-consciously. Priest? Damn, you've even given Peng Liyun a nickname? TSK, you're not good at giving nicknames. It's not funny at all. Little Ming's attention was quickly diverted. He cheered up and remembered what someone said just now. Cheng, you're exaggerating. My birthday is on June 2nd, so I'm only 4 months older than you. You actually said it was half a year. It's just rounding off. Yeah, 4 is rounding off. But I think you're wrong. It should be 8 months. So, you're 1 year older than me. As the group of people from Songqing University trained hard and Lu Qing went back and forth to America again, the beginning of April came. The new University Martial Arts Nationals was officially held in Huahai. P.S. Looking for recommendation tickets and monthly tickets on Monday. Chapter 532. April 6th, Huahai, New Era Martial Arts Stadium. The opening match of the National University Martial Arts Competition officially started. Last year's champion, Songqing University Martial Arts Club, accepted the challenge from Guiyang University Martial Arts Club. In the live broadcast room, the host Lu Cheng saw that the usually taciturn Wei Buping was irritated by Kai Zhongming during the conversation and lost his sense of propriety. At the beginning of the match, Wei Buping's continuous attacks failed and fell into a passive position. The more the match went on, the more anxious he became. Lu Cheng couldn't help but sigh and laugh. This contestant from Songqing University is quite unique. His partner had changed to the poison milk hierarch, He Xiaowei. This internet celebrity stroked his beard and said, "This young man has a bright future. He should learn how to cook from me." Don't say that. I really think he has the talent to make a living as a martial arts commentator. Lu Cheng echoed with a smile. Xiaowei, who do you think will be the champion of the national university competition this time? If it's not Shanbei, I'll shave all my beard. He Xiaowei subconsciously wanted to say this, but when he saw Lu Cheng standing at the edge of the arena with his arms crossed, he unconsciously became calm and replied in a more tactful tone. Let's put it this way. This national university competition is a competition between the three big guys and a bunch of kids. The other teams can only fight for the top 4 and the final ranking. They can hold their heads high in front of their old enemies. Indeed, the inhuman stage is a big hurdle. And the other martial arts clubs don't even have a professional 6th pin in the dance stage. Even if they set up a formation, Peng Liyun, Ren Li, and Lu Cheng can handle it alone. How can they fight? Lu Cheng glanced at the screen and casually commented on the changes in the situation. Wei Buping's strength is higher than Kai Zhongming's, but if this goes on, he will lose soon. Guiyang also doesn't have the confidence to win. They put the main player at the end to give the other members more competition experience. A wise man submits to circumstances. He Xiaowei concluded with a mocking tone. Zhang Dongliang is about the same as her. Li Xiaoyuan of Guangnan is said to be a weak 6th pin, but he hasn't participated in the ranking event yet. Shi Meng, a senior, got a 7th pin certificate at the end of October last year. Su Zhelan is very talented, but he has just entered the school and hasn't understood the meaning of withdrawing. The two families can compete. However, as you said, it's just a fight for the 4th place. Coincidentally, they are in the same group. Whoever wins will be the first to advance to the next round and avoid Shanbei, Capital, and Songqing in the quarterfinals. Yes. He Xiaowei nodded slightly. Among the top 3, Songqing's other contestants are too weak. Overall, they're a step behind. I don't think they'll make it to the finals unless they're lucky enough to draw Huahai or Guangnan. Yes, if Lin Ke didn't drop out, with his current strength of 6th pin, Songqing University would have a good chance of winning the championship. Lu Cheng sighed. Unfortunately, there is no if. Sigh, the reserves of Songqing University all have their own characteristics and potential, but they are still not mature enough. They don't even have a dance stage member. Even if Lu Cheng can beat Peng Liyun or Ren Li, it won't change the final result. How? In Shanbei, Fang Zhirong is a weak 6th pin. Bernhard has the strength of an 8th pin with his supernatural ability of air explosion. Jiang Kongchan of Capital has improved quickly and is already a weak 7th pin. Jiang Jingfeng is short of credits and delayed his graduation. He is a top 8th pin. What can Songqing University do to change the result? We believe in subjective initiative, but we also have to respect objective reality. He Xiaowei's comments were always full of passion, making people want to beat him up. Hey, do you think Jiang Jingfeng delayed his graduation on purpose? To get a taste of the championship? As soon as Lu Cheng finished speaking, the situation on the field was clear. Kai Zhongming had won the first round of nationals for Songqing University. He Xiaowei sneered. Who knows? But even if they delayed their graduation on purpose, their chances of winning the championship are slim. Peng Liyun is weaker than Ren Li, and Fang Zhirong can beat Jiang Kongchan and Jiang Jingfeng by himself, not to mention Bernhard, the explosive maniac. At this point, he couldn't control his primitive strength and raised his voice. Tell me, how can Capital win? How? If they win, I'll shave off my beard, no, all the hair on my head. What kind of deep hatred do you have with Shanbei? Lu Cheng couldn't help but laugh. Was it necessary to poison them like that? He Xiaowei quickly explained, although I'm called the poison milk hierarch, it's only sometimes. I can't say that the sun rises from the east and it will explode with a bang, right? Shanbei will win the championship, just like this. There's no doubt about it. Okay. Lu Cheng turned to introduce the second round of the competition. At the end, he said emotionally, this year's competition is indeed very clear, but it's definitely the most memorable one to watch. 3 Inhuman University students duel. No one has ever done it before, and it's hard to find another one after. As they graduate or leave school early, such a glorious scene can't be replicated. In the following match, student Kai Xiaoming almost completed the great feat of 1 versus 2. However, he encountered the tough and determined Zhu Ning and was unable to seize the opportunity to win. Deng Yang, on the other hand, easily defeated his opponent who was in a weakened state. He fought fiercely with Guiyang University's leading player, Chen Mo, who was at the peak of rank 8, for a long time but was unable to turn the tables. With Lu Cheng's appearance, the opening round came to a close. In the next few days, Capital, Huahai, Guangnan, and Shanbei showed up one after another and won all of them. Peng Liyun and Renli didn't even have to fight. The whole group stage was peaceful. The teams led by the 3 Inhumans advanced triumphantly, while the rest of the martial arts clubs competed for the rankings. Only the battle between Huahai and Guangnan was eye-catching. In the end, thanks to Xing Jingjing's outstanding supernatural ability, Huahai narrowly defeated Guangnan and won first place, making the latter face Shanbei in the quarterfinals. In the battle between Shanbei and Guangnan, Peng Liyun finally put himself in the list of fighters, guarding the end. In the first round, Fang Zhirong fought hard against Li Xiaoyuan. After several reversals, he barely defeated his opponent, but he was close to his limit. In the second round, he didn't exhaust Xi Meng much, but Bernhard was badly beaten. Peng Liyun, who hadn't fought since the end of August last year, made his first appearance. He defeated Xi Meng and Su Jialan effortlessly without showing his strength. After Songqing University, Capital, and Huahai defeated their opponents and entered the quarterfinals, the old man Fang Jinju came to the center of the arena again for the final drawing ceremony. Shanbei University Martial Arts Club. He took out the ball and showed it to everyone with a smile. Then, while everyone was holding their breath, he drew Shanbei's opponent. Deng Yang, Kai Zongming, and He Zi interlocked their fingers and held their chins, murmuring softly, Imperial Capital, Imperial Capital, Imperial Capital. If Shanbei draws Capital, we can face Huahai and have a great chance of entering the finals again. Ha! The old man Fang Jinju looked at the ball and shook his head with a smile. Then, he gathered his chi and said loudly, Songqing University Martial Arts Club. Last year's champion and runner-up met in advance. Phew. Lu Cheng heard dejected sighs around him, but he wasn't disappointed at all. If they could enter the quarterfinals this year, they would have achieved their goal. At least they didn't let their martial arts club fall off the cliff. He turned his head subconsciously and looked to the other side, only to see Peng Liyun looking at him. His temperament was refreshing, his facial features were clean, and he didn't look like he was in a trance. When their eyes met, the radiance in Peng Liyun's eyes converged. It was as if a thick and terrifying silver lightning had struck down in the dark night, blinding Lu Cheng's vision. However, Peng Liyun didn't back down. His eyes seemed to contain a raging snowstorm, extremely cold, extremely fierce, and extremely powerful. Lu Cheng couldn't help but shudder. After looking at each other and smiling, they both turned back with satisfaction, looking forward to the competition in 2 days. This was the 3rd time they had fought each other. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Lu Cheng's phone kept vibrating with messages. Go, Pikachu. Beat him, beat him. Yenjika said with a clenched fist. Beat him. Hipster said concisely. Let's break the Taoist spirit. Renli was enjoying the show. Just as Lu Cheng finished replying and was about to put away his phone, a message from a familiar number came in. Brother-in-law said, good luck. Damn it, I almost thought your number was ghost. Lu Qing laughed and replied with a fist bump emoji. Then, he heard the old man Fang Jinzhu's voice in his ears. Semi-finals, Shanbei vs Songqing, Capital vs Huahai. P.S. This is a transition. Chapter 533. 2 days later, at 7:00 in the evening, the New Era Martial Arts Stadium was flooded with a large number of spectators. Even though the scalpers had inflated the ticket prices, there was still no lack of people asking for tickets. In just 10 minutes, there were many transactions. Even the posters with pictures of Lu Qing and Peng Liyun facing each other while holding hands were very popular. If it weren't for the security guards at the entrance, all the pictures would have been taken away. The big screen in the arena was playing highlights of Lu Qing and Peng Liyun's matches in the past few years. Unfortunately, the most recent highlights were from 8 months ago and lacked their recent performances. This made the spectators even more excited and full of guesses. The spectator stands around the arena had been cleared to prevent damage from the aftermath of the inhuman battle. At the same time, the Huahai city government had specially mobilized a group of martial artists from the police force to stand guard at various key locations to prevent accidents. When Peng Liyun heard the clamorous cheers echoing endlessly outside, he snapped out of his daze in the changing room. He looked around at Coach Huang Qing, Second Commander Fang Zhirong, and the others, and said with a faint and clean smile, "I'm not going anywhere. I'll be the first to go." His voice wasn't loud and his aura was gentle. Fang Zhirong was inexplicably stunned and forgot his original thoughts. He nodded in agreement. Instructor Huang Qing, whose hair was completely white, nodded slightly and didn't object. As for Bernhard and the rest, they didn't object either. Peng Liyun retracted his gaze and looked at the TV screen in the locker room, his thoughts drifting. At first, he planned to retire from the university martial arts circle after winning his 3rd championship and compete in professional competitions. Who knew that he would be injured by Lin Ke last year and lose his honor? Thus, he changed his mind and stayed to fight for another year. In the past 6 months, his life was completely different from his original plan of fighting a high-level battle every week. He was lazy and leisurely, almost not fighting at all. Logically speaking, this would cause his martial arts to regress. However, Peng Liyun experienced something different from the past. He really did settle down and gain something different. And now, it was the season to test this gain. Thunder is yin and yang, one is still and one is active, that's the right way. Extreme activity turns to silence, and extreme quietness leads to action. I've been quiet for long enough. Peng Liyun turned his head subconsciously and looked at the door of the locker room. His line of sight seemed to pass through the door and onto the arena, onto the Songqing University Martial Arts Club. I'm looking forward to it. He let out a sigh spontaneously. Every joint, every muscle, and every acupoint in his body suddenly exploded. They were heavy, powerful, and humming terrifyingly, like rotating turbines and gathering thunder. Hearing this, Fang Zhirong, Bernhard, and the others looked at each other in fear. Spring comes with a clap of thunder, and all living things come to life. In another locker room. Although Dang Yang, He Zi, and Wang Dali didn't think they had done anything wrong, they looked at Lu Qing with guilt and self-blame. Peng Liyun will definitely be the first to fight. Even if little Yang Zi and I, 2 weaklings, fight together, we won't even be enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. Qing, it's all up to you now. Kai Zhongming broke the relatively oppressive atmosphere and said in a self-deprecating manner. You're a weakling, don't drag me into it. Dang Yang protested. Next year I'll definitely be a mighty one of the Dan stage. Lu Qing listened with a calm smile. He picked up a pen and paper and quickly wrote down the list of fighters and the order of the fighters. Lu Qing, Dang Yang, Kai Zhongming. He passed the paper to Yan Shaoling beside him and said with a slight smile, Sorry to trouble you. Li Xiaowen found a very good job and went to the company for an internship in February. The menial work of the martial arts club was basically handed over to a self-proclaimed reliable sophomore girl. Yan Shaoling took the list of fighters and nodded excitedly. She rushed out of the door. After a muffled bang, she squatted down with hands on her forehead. eyes full of tears. Who didn't close the locker door? Are you okay? Mu Jinmian asked with concern. He scolded with disappointment. Don't you watch where you're going? Yan Shaoling looked up with grievance. Normally, with my height, I shouldn't have hit that spot. Everyone was speechless and almost burst out laughing. The heavy atmosphere was swept away. How many centimeters taller are you today? He asked without thinking. Yan Shaoling was enlightened. She slapped her thigh and said, "Oh my God, so that's how it is." Everyone couldn't help but laugh as they watched the short, petite figure flash out of the locker room. King retard. Out of the door, Yan Shaoling paused. She didn't rush to the supervisor station. Instead, she took out her phone, entered the forum, and posted a post. Ha 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 ha, he smiled at me. Ha 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 ha, he said, sorry to trouble you. CK, are you crazy? Unparalleled Dragon King, and the others were shocked. Not crazy, I'm a love-struck fool. Brahman rolled on the floor. But I'm so envious. In the locker room, Lu Qing shook his head with a smile. He closed his eyes and suddenly recalled every detail of the past 6 months. Strolling in the rain, encountering gods in the void, self-reflection, ambushing Butcher, suppressing him with precision from start to finish, attacking Mizuki's fleet, grasping the perfect timing, daily life at home, warm and sweet, meaningful and lasting, studying physical and vulnerability secret arts in the underground of the Ice God sect, gaining insights and comprehending by analogy, after leveling up, facing Brandon and familiarizing himself with new techniques, pondering every day. Practicing diligently, finally getting Lament of the Ice Queen ready for actual combat, various scenes replayed in his mind. Finally, they merged into a furnace and ignited a burning desire for battle. After 8 months, it was time for him to give it his all again. I can't wait. Lu Qing suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the door. The temperature in the locker room seemed to have dropped to freezing point, making the unprepared Kai Zongming, Dang Yang, and the rest shiver. But when they touched the skin on the back of their hands, they realized that the temperature didn't change. Everything that happened before seemed to come from the mind, from the heart. In the live broadcast studio, the host, Lu Chang, looked at the scene in the stadium and sighed. Everyone is so passionate. This match is indeed worth looking forward to. Just the gimmick of a battle between the heavenly sons of the era is enough to attract people, not to mention the fact that both Lu Qing and Peng Liyun are bursting with popularity. He Xiaowei chimed in with a smile. Also, this is the first time they are on the same level, fighting at the peak of their strength. In December 2 years ago, Peng Liyun was almost 1 rank higher than Lu Qing, and he quickly defeated Lin Ke in advance. In April last year, Peng Liyun was seriously injured by Lin Ke's self-sacrifice and was not in his best condition. Now, the participants of the two sides had been decided. Lu Qing and Peng Liyun would no longer be disturbed by other people, and they were finally at the same level, an evenly matched peak competition. Yeah, this reminds me of the words top of the Forbidden City. Xiaowei, who do you think has a higher chance of winning? Asked Lu Chang with interest. He Xiaowei shook his head like a rattledrum. That's hard to say. They haven't fought seriously for half a year. How am I supposed to judge? As soon as he said that, Peng Liyun's fans in front of the screen heaved a sigh of relief. They felt that the dark clouds over their heads had mostly dissipated. As for the audience who liked Lu Qing, they were slightly disappointed. If He Xiaowei thought that Peng Liyun would win, that would be cursing his opponent. If he thought that Lu Qing could win, how could one's supernatural powers defy fate? Indeed. They have been accumulating their strength for half a year. I wonder what kind of power they will unleash today. They might both be close to pin 4. Lu Chang lamented. He suddenly thought of a rumor and said with a smile, I heard that Lu Qing won't be returning to Wiyue Club and will be joining Longhu Club in July. Peng Liyun is about to graduate from university and will definitely return to Shangqing sect. I feel like they are another pair of arch-rivals like Dragon King and Warrior Sage. They are the future Dragon King and Warrior Saint? Have you asked living Buddha Shi Shan or wisdom king Ji Hai before you said this? He Xiaowei snorted and retorted instinctively, even if the living Buddhas of past generations would slow down after reaching physical invulnerability and reach a bottleneck, who knows when Lu Cheng and Peng Liyun will surpass them. But what about Ji Hai? He has only reached physical invulnerability for 3 years and has already won the title of king. Is this something that ordinary people can compare to? Even if there are coincidences, like when Dragon King and Warrior Sage fought in other competitions and both were heavily injured, or when some of the titled mighty ones met in advance and the winner was injured, he might be able to defeat many first pin and titled mighty ones. This is enough to prove his strength. He has already firmly suppressed the other heavenly sons of China. The dates of the 5 major title competitions were staggered. The finals of the Battle of the Kings were usually held at the end of March or the beginning of April. Daxing Temple's Ji Hai won the challenge more than 20 days ago and became the new king of the year. He was honored as Wisdom King. That's true, but Ji Hai is 4 years older than Peng Liyun and 5 years older than Lu Cheng. Strictly speaking, you can't directly compare them, Lu Cheng said to the point. Then we'll see in 4 or 5 years. At that time, if Lu Cheng and Peng Liyun can reach physical invulnerability, they won't let down the title of Heavenly Son of China. As for the titles, He Xiaowei laughed. The host, Lu Cheng, was afraid of causing a dispute and didn't want to delve into this topic. He quickly said with a professional smile, "All right, the pre-match commentary has come to an end. Let's cut to the off-site interview and hear what the audience has to say." The scene changed to the last line of people queuing to enter the stadium. The reporter handed the microphone to a pretty girl with straight shoulder-length hair. "Hello, may I know which side you support?" "Shan Bei." "Peng Liyun." The girl answered without hesitation. "Why?" the reporter asked. The pretty girl with the aura of a student smiled and said, "I prefer Peng Liyun's personality." He's more handsome." The girl who boldly voiced her opinion blushed. She curled her lips and turned her head to the other side. "What about you?" The reporter saw a girl with a sweet smile nearby. She was eager to give it a try. "I like Lu Cheng. He's more manly." The girl shouted after pondering for a long time. After the interview, the director looked at the time and cut the scene back to the stadium. The host, Lu Cheng, announced excitedly, "Everyone, the competition is about to begin." At this moment, Lu Cheng, who was sitting in the away team seat, received a message from Yan Zhika. It was a photo of their fingers intertwined and their rings reflecting off each other. "I'm with you." Clenching fist expression, the girl said. 2 against 1 doesn't seem fair." Snickering expression, Lu Cheng replied and locked the screen. He passed his phone to Kai Zhongming for safekeeping and stood up slowly to look at the arena. On the other side, Peng Liyun took off the white towel draped over his body and stood up slowly. Chapter 534. Lu Cheng. Peng Liyun. All of a sudden, the sound waves exploded. Countless spectators raised their arms and shouted the name in their hearts at the top of their lungs. It was as if a forest had suddenly grown around the stadium and a fighter jet had swept past. Lu Cheng didn't unleash his aura. He walked along the aisle at a moderate pace and slowly climbed the stone steps. He stood on the left side of the referee. At the same time, Peng Liyun also walked into the arena calmly. It was as if he was waiting for the battle to officially start before he unleashed his accumulated strength, imitating the horror of a flood breaking through a dam. Their eyes met and they smiled. Both of them had grasped the other's thoughts. The referee with a half-beard looked left and right. When the electronic clock struck the hour, he raised his right hand and announced loudly, "Talk time begins." Peng Liyun lowered his waist and his body seemed to sway with a natural rhythm. As he swayed, Lu Cheng couldn't find any flaws. He looked over and smiled faintly. "I've been waiting for you for a long time." "Me too." Lu Cheng smiled casually in response. For the next 2 minutes, neither of them spoke again. They were both counting down the time in their hearts, just like a race car. 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Peng Liyun's body emitted a low turbo pressure sound. It was slow and drawn out, with pauses and pauses. It made people feel what it meant to be ready to go. 10, 9, 8, 7. Lu Cheng's muscles and fascias tightened. The exchange of hot and cold in his body seemed to be brewing into a terrifying eye of a storm. 3, 2, 1. Begin. As the referee swung his right hand down, Peng Liyun's waist sank and reversed in an instant. The sound of turbine compression exploded in unison. His entire body pounced out like a bolt of lightning. His steps made the arena shake rapidly, and the muffled sound of his steps rolled in the hearts of everyone, like the first thunderclap of the arrival of spring. His shadow was still there, and the shaking hadn't stopped. However, he had already crossed more than 20 meters and appeared in front of Lu Cheng in a flash. Lu Cheng's back turned sharply and his muscles swelled. He completed the turn in an instant and circled to the side. He broke through the air barrier, stirring up a strong wind as he smacked his opponent in the face. Bang! The wave that was strong enough to send a grown man flying came at him. Peng Liyun pulled his left arm and raised his palm to block his face. At the same time, the silver light in his eyes fell, and his muscles flashed. His right shoulder shook violently, and his arm swelled up as he swung it to the side in a condescending manner. Lu Cheng straightened his back, clenched his right fist, and blocked the attack. Then, he would follow up with a crushing punch with his left hand and a low knee kick to gain the upper hand. However, in the reflection of his ice mirror, Peng Liyun's muscles and fascia were completely different from when he was exerting force. It was similar to the situation when he was performing the simplified version of the fighting formula. There was a problem. Lu Cheng's heart skipped a beat. The two large muscles on his back suddenly bulged and pulled his right arm up. He clenched his fist and punched out. It was as if he was blocking, and guiding. Bang! As soon as the two of them made contact, Lu Cheng could feel his opponent's extraordinary strength. If he took it head-on, his arm would definitely be knocked away and he would be knocked backwards. His clenched fist suddenly stretched out, and his palm moved diagonally from the bottom to the top. He skillfully diverted Peng Liyun's attack, and although it seemed as if it was as light as the wind, it was actually a very dangerous parry. Peng Liyun took advantage of the momentum to turn his body. He raised his left arm again, and in the flash of an electric arc, it swelled and hammered downwards. The basic martial arts of the Thunder Sect, lightning and fire stance, could stimulate the tailbone and cause an outburst. At the high-ranked Dan stage, there would be a corresponding advanced version of the secret art. After Peng Liyun comprehended Heaven's golden flame, he simplified many of the steps and used pure electric shock to injure the body with extremely strong control. He obtained a technique that weakened the effect but allowed him to use it faster. Bang! 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 He swung his arms, and in the flash of electric arcs, he hammered down ferociously. This caused the surrounding air to condense into layers of dark clouds that weighed down on Lu Cheng's heart, bringing about a terrifying mental deterrence. This also caused the audience to have an inexplicable hallucination. It was as if Peng Liyun had transformed into the god of thunder with a giant hammer in his hand. His upper body was bare, and his bronze muscles were wrapped in electric arcs. Amidst the sweat dripping down his masculine and powerful aura, he swung and smashed again and again. It was completely different from his usual style, and it was refreshing. Lu Cheng didn't dare to be careless. He immediately circulated his qi and blood to stimulate the corresponding parts of his body. Simplified fighting formula. His muscles bulged, and he pulled back his arm in a fighting posture. His fist shot out like lightning towards his opponent's giant hammer. He was going to meet force with force and meet force with force. Boom! 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 He exploded 3 times in a row and bounced back 3 times, stirring up an invisible airflow that turned into waves. The electric arcs flickered and splashed everywhere. Boom! Their arms propped up their sleeves, and their muscles looked like they were about to explode. Peng Liyun's explosion was still slightly inferior to the secret technique. His body shook and he took a step back. Just as Lu Cheng was about to take the opportunity to stretch his back and launch a series of attacks to bring the rhythm into his control, he suddenly put his palms together. It was as if he was about to unleash the thunder blade with a thunderous boom. Lu Cheng shifted his center of gravity and immediately turned to the right in an attempt to avoid being struck by lightning. However, Peng Liyun's strike didn't make any sound. Instead, the sound of a vortex spinning madly in his body sounded again. A huge and strange suction force appeared out of thin air, pulling Lu Cheng to the front. In the previous hammer strike, he had secretly left electric arcs, accumulating a layer of single attribute electric charge on his opponent's body. Now that north and south were attracting each other, it came in handy. Thunder begets magnetism, and magnetism begets force. After the suction, Peng Liyun pulled his palms apart, pulling out a silver-white electric snake as thin as a cicada's wing. It was blinding. Pseudo-cloudless thunder blade. However, Lu Cheng seemed to have been prepared. Just as he was pulled forward, he took advantage of the momentum and squatted down. Not only did he dodge the instantaneous electric light in time, but he also threw a punch at his opponent's waist. How could he, who had stepped into the realm of encountering gods in the void and self-reflection, not notice the layer of electric charge on his body? He had been holding back all this time to create an opportunity. Bam! The two of them were less than half a step apart. Before the crisp sound faded, the punch was already close. Cold sweat beaded on Peng Liyun's forehead as he reversed the vortex. The humming sound erupted again. Lu Cheng's punch was getting slower and slower, as though he was caught in a repulsive force field. However, at this moment, he snapped his fingers and opened them, shooting out streaks of crystal clear and cold ice soul brilliance. Breaking through the surface with a single point, the force field was penetrated. Seeing that the cold streaks were about to reach his body, Peng Liyun, who didn't feel that everything was fine after reversing the vortex, pulled his spine and pulled his body diagonally backward. The streaks of white streaks brushed past him and covered the surface of his clothes with a layer of frost. Lu Cheng bounced his waist and stood up. Striding forward, he clenched his fist and launched a forward charge attack. Peng Liyun extended his palms downwards and crossed them into a net, firmly blocking the attack. Lu Cheng didn't manage to land a hit, so he took advantage of the situation and turned around, his back facing his enemy. Then, he swung his elbow backwards and struck fiercely. With a crisp sound, Peng Liyun's raised arm was swung away helplessly. Once again, he took a step back. Lu Cheng had already turned around. He retracted his chi and blood and immediately exploded them. He was about to launch a series of explosive attacks with the precision of a ruler. Left, Ice Soul technique, right, Emperor Yen technique. Alternating, never-ending attacks. However, at this moment, Peng Liyun lowered his waist and swung backwards. Amidst the shaking of the arena, he made a flash attack backwards and dodged 30 meters away, close to the edge. Crack! Lu Cheng's explosive Dan force rushed to his feet, causing the surrounding green bricks to soften into powder. Using the terrifying rebounding force, he spread his wings and leaped forward. In the blink of an eye, he had closed in on his opponent. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Peng Liyun displayed his body movements and made a series of turns, stirring up gusts of strong wind, not giving his opponent a chance to gain momentum. Lu Cheng vaguely understood the key point of their fight. On the surface, it looked like they had the upper hand, but in fact, it was a battle of rhythm. The one who could interrupt and destroy the other's momentum and control the changes of speed would have the upper hand and a chance to accumulate victories. Unconsciously, he had a new understanding of the battle of high-ranked Dan stage fighters. After several turns, he still couldn't get rid of his opponent. However, Peng Liyun took the opportunity to complete the outline of the Green Jade Talisman book in his mind. He condensed a thunder snake in his palm and released a powerful bolt of lightning that turned from green to purple. Simplified physical invulnerability move, Thunder Seal, revealed. With the help of the ice mirror, Lu Cheng had already sensed it. He pulled his waist and back, swung his center of gravity, and dodged to the side. The lightning struck the ground of the arena, leaving a long, meandering charred mark like a big tree. Peng Liyun immediately counterattacked when his opponent's rhythm paused. He lowered his qi and blood and condensed them into a single point, in exchange for a violent explosion and ferocious rush. Bam! He took a step forward, his right arm swelled and punched. His fist was covered with a layer of silver-white thunder snake, as if he was wearing an exaggerated thunder glove. It was heavy, strong, and fierce. Lu Qing followed up with forced concentration. He pushed his feet together and rushed forward with the heart-drilling hammer, blocking his opponent's fist. Boom! The explosion broke up the electric arc, and the impact caused a shock. The two fighters were evenly matched. One was slightly paralyzed, while the other's qi and blood were slightly disturbed. Bam! 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 Peng Liyun kept punching with his fists. When they were evenly matched, he suddenly turned his body and pulled back his leg, creating another bolt of lightning. Boom! 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 His whip leg followed by a knee strike followed by an arm flick followed by a reverse swing, and a reverse swing followed by a hammering with the other hand. The series of attacks flowed smoothly. Every strike burst out with Dan force, spewing out thunder snake, illuminating the arena. In the eyes of the audience, Peng Liyun was like the thunder god swinging his hammer in the beginning. Now he had turned into a bolt of lightning, striking again and again, blurring the audience's vision. The Nine Tribulations chain was shockingly powerful. Lu Cheng's spirit was shaken and shook. Fortunately, the ice mirror had been formed. His consciousness was in midair, so he barely resisted and didn't slow down. Relying on a clear understanding of his surroundings and his opponent, he kept bursting out Dan Qi, punching and kicking. Sometimes he used Ice Spirit, sometimes he used Emperor Yen, and fought fiercely with Peng Liyun. Every time they collided, it was like a bomb being detonated, shaking the ground, creating craters, and filling the air with smoke and dust. The paralysis was accumulating, and the shock was heavy. Although both of them used force concentration to dissipate most of the effects, it was inevitable that there would still be problems. Peng Liyun's Nine Tribulations chain was based on the Nine Heavens fusion, a unique physical invulnerability skill. The chain was tight and the force was continuous. Even if Lu Qing used 24 blizzard strikes, he was gradually at a disadvantage. Boom! Just as they finished another fist collision, Peng Liyun suddenly pulled his fascia, flicked his joints, and made a rapid attack with overlapping afterimages. Machine God Fist. He took the initiative to control the speed of the change in rhythm. But just as he made the adjustment, Lu Qing swayed his center of gravity backward, pulled his waist and swung away under the pressure of the fist wind. Not too early, not too late, just right. His punch missed, and his pursuit slowed down. Peng Liyun looked at Lu Qing, who had steadied himself on the ground, and understood that he knew the importance of rhythm. Being in his own rhythm would make the enemy passive. Every move would be restrained, and the more he fought, the more difficult it would be. Up until now, the two of them had been fighting back and forth, and it was a tie again. At this time, the audience came back to their senses and burst into cheers. Just now, Lu Qing and Peng Liyun were attacking and defending each other, and the whole process was so intense that they almost couldn't breathe. How exciting! Two murderous weapons in human form. Evenly matched. I'm afraid they are close to the level of professional fourth pin. In the live broadcast room, the host Lu Cheng blurted out. He Xiaowei nodded in a daze. Yes, but they probably won't participate in the ranking event. When they reach physical invulnerability, they can directly get third pin. Peng Liyun rarely participated in the ranking event, and Lu Cheng had only been there once. Relying on their own rapid progress, they easily got the certificate based on the hard standard of the state. Good. Peng Liyun thought to himself, and the fighting spirit in his eyes grew stronger. With a flash attack, he closed in on his opponent and made another strong attack. Good move. Lu Cheng was in high spirits, and he didn't dodge. Instead, he returned his qi and blood, balanced into a Dan, and spurted out his force. Then he pushed his feet inward, shook his right arm, and turned it into a steel whip, and swung it down diagonally. Bam! There was a loud explosion, and the ground was in a mess. The two of them swayed and then closed in again, either bombarding each other with blast punches or vibrating Zen hammers. Boom! 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 The two of them fought until sand and pebbles flew everywhere. The deafening sound was completely displayed. They had learned their lesson from before and didn't reveal any flaws. They were evenly matched. At most, one of them would occasionally gain the upper hand, but it would be gone in the blink of an eye. The intense battle made the audience exclaim in satisfaction, and their blood couldn't help but boil. They raised their hands and shouted loudly, both to cheer and to vent. 7 or 8 minutes passed. Even though Lu Cheng and Peng Liyun were at the inhuman level, they couldn't help but show signs of declining in various aspects, especially Peng Liyun, who was both mentally and physically affected. He was already showing signs of fatigue. Lu Cheng was replenished by the Jin Dan, so his physical condition was pretty good, except for his mental state. It's time. With a thought, he controlled his qi and blood, stimulated his body, and used the simplified wholeness formula in exchange for a clear mind. Bam! He stretched his back, stepped forward, and attacked. His right fist was surrounded by red and white flames, and he punched straight ahead. His momentum was so strong that it overpowered his opponent in an instant. Peng Liyun's mind was slightly shaken. He lowered his arm and punched downwards, hitting the surface of Lu Cheng's fist. Bam! Amidst the loud noise, Peng Liyun's eyes flashed with surprise. His forearm bounced back involuntarily, almost hitting his chest. His body couldn't help but sway. Bam! 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 There was no joy in Lu Cheng's eyes. He spread out his arms with indifference, and combined with the explosion of the Dan stage, he attacked with precision. One punch was crystal cold, and the other was heavy and scorching hot. He forced Peng Liyun into a defensive position, struggling to hold on. With the rhythm under his control, Lu Cheng suddenly paused in the midst of his consecutive attacks, allowing the flames, force, and mental state of the Dan balance to compress inwards, away from the cold and away from the darkness. His eyes turned dark in an instant, deep and indescribable, like a night without stars or moon. Bam! Lu Cheng's blood returned to him, and he came back to life. He stepped forward with his left foot, swung his right arm, and punched Peng Liyun like a violent snowstorm. Self-created unique skill, Lament of the Ice Queen. Instead of being surprised, Peng Liyun was overjoyed. At the moment his opponent changed his rhythm, he reversed the yin and yang in his body, creating a vortex that devoured each other. According to reliable information, Muko Yamashita had mastered the swordsman formula and had used it on his companions a few times. Therefore, there was enough reason to suspect that Lu Cheng, who had close ties with the military, had obtained the wholeness formula. I've been waiting for a long time, just for this moment. Although he wasn't sure what had happened to allow him to use the 9 words formula so quickly without the need for hand seals or secret sounds, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. With a bam, Peng Liyun crossed his palms and pushed them out, facing Lu Cheng's hammer attack. The surrounding light dimmed in a frightening manner. Poof! A muffled sound like a dud was heard. Peng Liyun's palm that was holding Lu Cheng's fist glowed with a layer of ice. The freezing spread rapidly, sealing him in ice in an instant, as though he had been placed in a transparent coffin. Lu Cheng felt his mental and physical strength leaking out rapidly into the depths of Peng Liyun's palm, as though he had encountered the star-sucking great skill. It was the same unique skill that he had created himself, reverse vortex. Thump, thump, thump. Lu Cheng withdrew his hand abruptly and took 3 steps back. His legs were weak and he looked exhausted. A lose-lose situation, said the guest commentator, He Xiaowei, in amusement. Before he could finish his sentence, he saw Lu Cheng energize and regain his vigor. Then, with a sliding step, he closed in on his opponent who had yet to break free from the ice seal. The second strike of the simplified wholeness formula. Did he take his medicine? He Xiaowei was shocked. How many lives does this guy have? Up, down, left, right, back, and back. And he's still a hero? It was just a simplified version, so the effect wasn't as good. Lu Qing wasn't at his peak, but his punches and kicks weren't slow at all. He swung his left arm, straightened it into a spear, and aimed it at Peng Liyun's throat. Peng Liyun was frozen, so his body's reaction was slow. He shouldn't be able to parry in time. At that moment, an electric light flashed and landed on Peng Liyun's elbow. The shock caused his forearm to swing out violently, blocking Lu Cheng's fist with a bang. Following that, Peng Liyun kept shooting out silvery white electric current to stimulate the corresponding parts of his body. This allowed his sluggish and stiffened muscles to move correctly, blocking Lu Cheng's attacks one after another. How can this work? Lu Cheng was stunned. He was almost counterattacked by his opponent. How can this work? He Xiaowei blurted out, dumbfounded. Is this the knee-jerk reaction? Or is he using electric current to simulate neuron signals to forcibly move his frozen body? Is he still F*King human? He's already an inhuman. No. I can't let Peng Liyun break free from his stiffness. I have to end this quickly. Lu Qing couldn't be bothered to be stingy with his mental strength. He kept drawing back his qi and blood and blasting out his Dan force. One punch was covered in frost to replenish the effects of the cold, while the other was surrounded by red, detonating externally to create vibrations. Peng Liyun forced himself to perform force concentration. The feeling of being frozen and stiffened lessened each time. Although his internal injuries were worsening, he didn't show any signs of losing. Lu Qing stepped forward, stirring up strong winds. Seizing the opportunity when his opponent's movements were affected, he switched to 8 different positions and struck 8 ice spirit force. Peng Liyun was on the verge of collapsing. At that moment, Lu Qing used snow cover followed by cold devour. Nimble as a fox, he flashed behind Peng Liyun. Taking advantage of Peng Liyun's missed attack, he was going to win. At the critical moment, the turbine in Peng Liyun's body spun again, releasing a strong repulsive force. Lu Cheng's heart was as cold as ice. Unmoved, he channeled his qi and blood to stimulate his body and used the simplified fighting formula again. Bam! He retracted his arm and swung it out with his bulging muscles, breaking through the air barrier and breaking through the force field. Then, he swung his arms and struck continuously with zen, not giving his opponent a chance to catch his breath. Bam, bam, bam. Peng Liyun's qi and blood churned and his muscles twitched. Affected by the electric current, his limbs became sluggish. Exhausted, Lu Qing paused for a moment and used the simplified wholeness formula one last time. Invigorated, he took a step forward and struck with a zen punch with his left fist. Peng Liyun was wobbling, his internal organs on the verge of rupturing. Bam! Lu Qing didn't hold back. He continued visualizing and raised his right arm. Severe warning. Peng Liyun's body was so sluggish that it was difficult for him to dodge. He could only use the electric current to stimulate him and raise his arm to receive the blow. Bam! Peng Liyun's body trembled and he stood rooted to the spot. Although his mind was under the thunder god's suppression and his thoughts weren't completely frozen, he couldn't send out signals in time to control his body. Lu Qing swung his left arm and opened his palm, pressing it against his opponent's head. The referee raised his right hand and ended the long and arduous battle. First round, Lu Qing wins. Lu Qing heaved a sigh of relief. Until the very end, he felt that Priest would be able to turn the tables. Once his momentum dropped, his spirit withered. In terms of other aspects, he was still slightly inferior to Peng Liyun. Moreover, the simplified wholeness formula's effect was getting worse with each strike. If his opponent could withstand 3 more strikes, he would probably be the one to lose. Of course, Priest's energy consumption wouldn't be much lower than his. Even if he could break free from the effects of paralysis, he might not be able to seize the opportunity to win. Victory was only a hair's breadth away. Peng Liyun recovered, stared at Lu Qing, and blurted out, "Encountering gods in the void?" "Yeah." Lu Qing nodded calmly. "Impressive." Peng Liyun praised. With great difficulty, he turned and left. He shook his head and smiled as he walked. He didn't feel dejected, only the urge to try again. The surrounding audience came to their senses and applauded enthusiastically. Chapter 535. Looking at Peng Liyun staggering back and feeling his own muscles trembling uncontrollably under the influence of the residual electric current, Lu Cheng, who was standing in the middle of the arena, suddenly felt a little emotional. "I've finally defeated the great demon king fair and square. It wasn't easy at all. From today onwards, he and I will truly stand on the same level. We will look at each other on equal footing. It has been 2.5 years since Master brought me to Shanbei to meet Peng Liyun in the morning to receive his education and set my goal. Over hundreds of days and nights, step by step, I've finally reached this point." Of course, it didn't mean that he would be able to suppress Taoist priest from now on. He could sense that even with the use of secret techniques, the difference between the two of them was only a hair's breadth. If he hadn't misjudged the situation and carelessly clashed with the lament of the Ice Queen, the outcome might have been completely different. And at the current stage of the advancement of the inhuman level, every step forward would be extremely difficult. Even if he were to master the fire sex techniques and Taoist priest's mastery of other supreme arts, he would only be able to enrich his means and surprise his opponent once or twice. He wouldn't be able to bring about any substantial improvement. For a long period of time, the two of them would be evenly matched. Lu Cheng took one last look at Peng Liyun before slowly retracting his gaze. He thought to himself, next, our competition will be to see who can reach the Dragon Gate faster and who can achieve physical invulnerability first. On the spectator stand, and Chao Yang, who had specially bought a ticket, uncrossed his hands and leaned back. He sighed and muttered to himself, "Hey, priest didn't go all out but lost the match." It wasn't that Peng Liyun had never failed in the past. However, he would either lose to the mighty ones or lose because he wanted to see his opponent's secret technique. It was rare for him to go all out and still lose to his opponent. This was even more so when it came to a battle of the same level. In the changing room of Capital Academy, Renly watched the entire live broadcast. She wasn't worried that it would affect the second semi-final match that was about to begin. At this time, her doll-like beautiful face had a bit more disappointment and also a bit more relief. He was disappointed because Lu Cheng had finally caught up with him. His worries had become a reality. He was relieved because it was proven that Taoist priests could also fail. There were also times when they were powerless. They weren't invincible demons. The little shadow in his heart was swept away. "I can defeat you too." She rubbed the sheathed longsword on her lap. It was warm to the touch, and the brass was as good as new. "Lu Cheng, Lu Cheng. Peng Liyun, Peng Liyun." Amidst the cheers and cheers of the audience, Lu Cheng, the host in the live broadcast room, sighed. "What a wonderful match. Lu Cheng is so strong. The era of the big devil is over." Indeed. Even though the gap between their performances isn't big, and Peng Liyun might be able to win the next match, the invincible Demon King has indeed passed away. The guest commentator, He Xiaowei, sighed and agreed. From now on, the elites won't be lonely anymore. Experts aren't lonely. Well said. They don't have to worry about not having an opponent of the same level. They can train and improve each other. They can be like friends and enemies, surpassing the past. Lu Cheng praised. He then added, "That enemy I'm talking about is a competitor. Fans nowadays are very scary. They would accuse you of anything you don't agree with. You have to be very careful with your words." Yes, such a battle is rare in the inhuman professional competition. Everyone can always reminisce about it. When the time comes, Lu Cheng and I will come up with a detailed commentary version. It won't be like just now, where you can't catch up with the rhythm after a slight pause. If everyone wants to watch the replay now, our White Jade Hall video supports online replays and slow acting. He Xiaowei helped his partner to advertise. Lu Cheng nodded his head slightly in satisfaction. He then sighed. It's a pity that Lu Cheng is going to enter the professional competition as an intern in his 4th year. Otherwise, he would be an unshakable super demon king in the next university martial arts competition. What's the point of bullying a primary school student? Without Penglian, Renly, and opponents of similar strength, what's the point of bullying noobs? It's a waste of time, a waste of life. He Xiaowei said with a smile. Lu Chang thought for a while and answered seriously, personally, I have to admit that bullying noobs is really interesting. As he spoke, he laughed. He Xiaowei couldn't help but laugh as well. Alright, the second round is about to begin. Let's see how much strength Lu Cheng has left and whether he can still create a miracle. After a few seconds, Lu Cheng's face turned serious. I don't think Lu Cheng can do anything after defeating Penglian. He Xiaowei was never stingy with his views. Shut up. Every single one of Shanbei's supporters and Penglian's fans shouted the same word in their hearts. Early in the morning in America, the sky was slightly bright. Yan Zhika was leaning against a pillow with a computer in front of her, a tablet in her left hand, and a phone in her right hand. She continued to watch the live broadcast and replayed the previous battle over and over again. She kept scrolling through the forums and Weibo with praises. When the referee announced the result, Yan Shaoling jumped up from the seats of the Songqing University Martial Arts Club. She waved her arms excitedly and mumbled incomprehensible words. If He hadn't held her back, she really didn't know what she would have done. Another diehard Luqing fan, Deng Yang, also waved his fists wildly and bumped fists with Kai Zongming, Wang Dali, and the others over and over again. The others were a little speechless. Damn retards. Little Ming cursed under his breath as he looked left and right with the corner of his mouth raised. Qing is really King awesome. Immersed in joy, they forgot that the match was not over yet. They only calmed down when the freckled and handsome Fang Zhirong stepped onto the stone steps. Half expectantly and half indifferently, they waited for the referee to wave his arm. In the arena, looking at the slightly gloomy and arrogant enemy opposite him, Lu Qing didn't take a break. He concentrated his qi and blood, afraid that he would waste what little energy he had left. Although this would cause his body to be continuously numbed and stimulated by the electric current, when the battle officially started, he could neutralize and attack during the match. Looking at Lu Cheng's slightly twitching body, Fang Zhirong didn't dare to be negligent. He got into a stance and concentrated. Lu Cheng was indeed close to his limit and was severely affected by the electric shock. However, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. A struggling beast is equally ferocious. The referee didn't wait. He raised his right hand and swiftly swung it down. Begin. Fang Zhirong bent his back and darted to the side in a strange posture. He was like a slithering venomous snake, like a wild wolf sneaking up on its prey. His body seemed to darken, as though he was leaving a black shadow behind him. He wanted to circle around his enemy and wait for a chance to deliver a fatal blow. Lu Cheng took a deep breath and endured the numbness and soreness in his muscles. Using his powerful control of self-reflection as the pivot, he pounced forward with a bang. He instantly went from a standstill to high speed. When he turned, he brushed against the void, breaking through the air barrier and stirring up strong winds. He wanted to take the initiative to pursue his enemy. Bam! 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 The strong winds continued and lightning intertwined. Lu Qing kept changing directions as though a deity was casting a spell. He closed the distance between him and Fang Zhirong amidst his shouts. However, his opponent's movements were strange and slippery. It was hard to lock onto him in a hurry. At this moment, Lu Qing focused and outlined the ancient character. His qi and blood followed suit and stimulated a certain part of his body. His eyes suddenly turned sharp and cold. A murderous aura shot out and enveloped his enemy. Fang Zhirong's mind wavered. It was as though he had come to a blood-soaked battlefield and was facing a general on horseback with a butcher's knife. He was trembling from the inside out and his body froze. It was this pause that allowed Lu Qing to close in. He gathered his qi and blood and dispelled part of the numbness. Wearing a glittering and frosty glove on his left fist, he swung it sideways. The effect of the simplified army formula wasn't strong. Fang Zhirong woke up after a short pause. Seeing that he couldn't avoid the ice spirit heavy punch, he could only explode his Dan force, swell his arms, and punch forward to block. Bam! Fang Zhirong's body swayed. In terms of strength, he was on par with Lu Cheng. However, his qi and blood were frozen, causing his muscles to stiffen and his movements to slow down. Bam! Lu Cheng did another force concentration. His other fist, surrounded by crimson flames, shot out like a cannonball. Bam bam bam. He did a series of bursts, alternating between using ice spirit to slow down his opponent and Emperor Yen to hurt him. His movements were smooth, each move heavy and precise. Bam bam bam. Fang Zhirong struggled to hold on and barely managed to defend himself. He wanted to use a killing move to get out of the predicament or dodge and regroup, but he could not find a single chance. His opponent's control of the rhythm and the connection between the moves were as if it had been measured with a ruler. There was no flaw. The ultimate technique that he had worked hard to learn over the past year was completely useless. In the midst of the intense attacks, Lu Cheng suddenly slowed down. Using his advantage, he visualized the heavy and scorching Emperor Yen and the god of fire, Zhurong, who was riding a crimson dragon. Thump. He stepped forward, pulled back his right arm, drew his bow, and shot a heavy punch. Fire Sec simplified physical invulnerability move, internal explosion punch. In the previous battle, Lu Cheng had used too much of his ice force, which had drained it. He couldn't use severe warning anymore. Even if he tried, the effect on Fang Zhirong would be limited, and he wouldn't be able to leave any injuries. It was a waste. At this moment, Fang Zhirong was at a loss for what to do with his opponent's change in rhythm. He could only use force concentration and spurt out Dan Qi. He raised his palm and blocked Lu Cheng's fist. Boom! It was as if a bomb had exploded in his body. His qi and blood were tumbling madly, and his internal organs were about to shift. Lu Cheng withdrew his qi and blood and threw out another ice spirit heavy punch, which was shrouded in cold air. It hit Fang Zhirong's arm, which was barely holding up, and made him stagger backward. Fang Zhirong's muscles stiffened, and he hurriedly held his Dan and struggled to defend himself. Another visualization and another internal explosion. Expressionless, Lu Cheng took a step forward, raised his right fist, and smashed it down heavily on his opponent's raised arms. Boom! Fang Zhirong's eyes, nostrils, ears, and mouth were all red. His qi and blood were tumbling so much that it was difficult for him to circulate them. His internal organs were severely injured. Lu Cheng withdrew his force and tried to throw another ice spirit punch. However, his head was suddenly dizzy. His spirit had reached its limit. Before he could use force concentration, his condensed qi and blood dispersed. Fang Zhirong was stunned at first. Then, he seized the opportunity to suppress his injuries. He stretched his back and swung backward, covering more than 10 meters in one leap. That wasn't the end. He made a forceful turn and dodged to the side. Lu Cheng felt it was a pity. He tried to catch up with him and try again with a normal attack. However, as soon as he took a step, he felt the world spinning around him. He almost fell and could only stand there helplessly. When he made his move, Fang Zhirong was like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. He swung his center of gravity and hurriedly retreated, as if he was scared out of his wits. Lu Cheng couldn't help but break into a smile. Once he started laughing, he couldn't stop. It was because of Fang Zhirong's overreaction and the satisfaction of defeating Peng Lian. Ha! Lu Cheng shook his head. He didn't care about Fang Zhirong or the referee anymore. He turned around, walked up the stone steps with a smile, and left the arena in a carefree manner. P.S. Looking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 536. Second round, Fang Zhirong wins. Hearing the referee's announcement and looking at Lu Cheng's back, Fang Zhirong froze on the spot. Immediately, his blood rushed to his head. Embarrassed and angry, he clenched his fists so hard that his knuckles cracked. His injuries are not light. Those 2 blows should be internal explosion punch. In the live broadcast studio, the host, Lu Chang, said, half surprised and half seeking confirmation. However, he didn't hear the answer he expected, be it a yes or no. His surroundings were eerily quiet. What's going on? Lu Chang turned to look at his partner, only to see He Xiaowei in a daze. His lips were trembling, and his face was alternating between red and green. TSK, what does Fang Zhirong's injuries have to do with you? Why do you look like you've lost your entire family fortune? Lu Chang was confused and full of doubts. At this moment, a thought flashed through his mind. He remembered something from before and instantly understood the whole story. He Xiaowei had sworn that if Daidu won the championship, he would shave all the hair on his head. After taking 2 internal explosion punches from a weak inhuman, Fang Zhirong's injuries weren't something that could be healed in 3 to 5 days. When he fought in Daidu, he would be considered strong if he could still exert 50% of his strength. Looks like the casual poison healer has to be replaced by the carefully prepared kind. Lu Chang looked at He Xiaowei's head from head to toe. His lips were tightly pursed, and his cheeks and neck were trembling as he tried to hold back his laughter. Looks like I can probably look forward to it. What kind of scene will it be? I can't hold it in, ha 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 ha. Returning to the seats, Lu Qing saw that everyone was still in a daze. What's wrong? Although he didn't expect to win this match, he shouldn't have waited so long. Kai Zhongming's mouth twitched. Have you ever considered us? What's the situation? Lu Cheng was confused. If you say you lost, then you lost. Why are you laughing? Little Ming pointed at Fang Zhirong in the arena. Look at him. He's obviously holding back his anger. He'll definitely vent it on little Yangzi and me and torture us. Even if that guy is seriously injured and weakened in all aspects, he's still not someone a top 9th pin fighter can challenge. Lu Qing came to a realization. He solemnly extended his hand and patted Talker's shoulder. Don't worry, there's a referee. Kai Zhongming was so angry that he laughed. You might as well not have said anything. It made one's calves tremble even more. At this moment, Deng Yang put on an expression as if he was not afraid of death. He bumped fists with Lu Cheng and the others one by one and walked towards the ring with his head held high. After watching him walk a few steps forward, Lu Cheng took back his phone and shared his joy with Yan Jika. Walking up the stone steps, Deng Yang stood in front of Fang Zhirong, who had just performed a force concentration to reduce the effects of his internal injuries. He saw his enemy's gloomy face and furious black eyes. He couldn't help but shudder. It was as if a venomous snake was staring at his throat and a sniper rifle was aiming at his temple. Was this the aura suppression of a professional 6th pin in the dance stage? Deng Yang tried his best to soothe his qi and blood, causing his skin to glow with a faint jade glow. Shizhou Island, quenching jade tactics. The referee did not give Fang Zhirong any more chances to calm down. He raised his right hand and swung it down. Begin. Fang Zhirong did not wipe the blood from his mouth and nose. He bent his back and slithered forward, strangely but quickly closing in on Deng Yang. Deng Yang was at a disadvantage in terms of body movement. He dodged a few times but still couldn't get rid of him. The distance between them was getting closer and closer. At this moment, Fang Zhirong withdrew his qi and blood and held it in his lower abdomen. Then it exploded and rushed out, expanding his legs. Crack. A spider web appeared under his feet. He pounced and closed in on Deng Yang, punching with his right fist. Deng Yang took a deep breath and expanded his temples. He raised his arms and made the most conservative parry. Suddenly, 2 muscles on Fang Zhirong's back bulged like butterflies. He pulled his spine to the side and changed his direction. He dodged to the side of his opponent in 1 step. Bam! He stretched out his left palm and opened his 5 fingers. They were shining with a dark light, like terrifying poisonous fangs. Deng Yang was used to this move and had lost his balance. Seeing that it was impossible to dodge, his face turned pale. He clenched his teeth, bulged his biceps, tightened his sleeves, and took the initiative to swing diagonally. Rip! His sleeve split open, revealing his jade-like skin held by Fang Zhirong's 5 fingers. Deng Yang's expression turned ferocious before he felt weak and out of breath. A jade-like glow appeared on his face. He exerted strength in his legs, lowered his shoulders, and leaned fiercely to the side. Bam! Fang Zhirong's qi and blood were still rolling. His body's reaction was delayed. He only had time to raise his right arm and block in front of his body. Deng Yang, who was counterattacking, hit him head-on. Fang Zhirong's arm trembled as he firmly resisted the blow. Fang Zhirong's qi and blood stagnated, and his internal injuries almost exploded. In the live broadcast room, Xiaowei swayed as if the Iron Mountain Lean had actually hit him. Deng Yang's dark poison force was activated. His strength disappeared and he had difficulty breathing. He could only lower his head and gasp for air. The difference in their realms was too great, so the effect was naturally amazing. Fang Zhirong's face turned red, then green. He blocked with his right arm and his left fist was about to hit his opponent's lower abdomen. At this moment, a hand reached out and blocked his attack. The referee raised his other hand and exhaled. Round 3, Fang Zhirong wins. Phew. Fang Zhirong exhaled. He retracted his fist and stood up straight, unable to vent his anger. Deng Yang gasped for breath and finally recovered. After cupping his hands and bowing, he walked out of the arena with light footsteps. He had only taken a few steps when Wang Dali and the others came up to support him. Go to the emergency room and get some oxygen? Lu Qing suggested. Yeah. Deng Yang nodded slightly. He panted and smiled bitterly. I tried my best, well done. Lu Qing praised from the bottom of his heart and extended his fist. Deng Yang raised his hand weakly and bumped it with Lu Cheng's. The ceremony was completed and he was sent to the emergency room. Kai Zongming, who was beside him, gasped and looked at Lu Qing. Can I forfeit? What do you think? Lu Qing looked at him, amused. I think you can. Kai Zongming didn't want to lose with words. He gritted his teeth and said with a twisted expression, Do you think I'm scared? What's there to be scared of? There's a referee anyway. He took a valiant and spirited stride forward, approaching the stone steps with an imposing manner. Just as he was about to ascend the arena, he calmed down his expression, hiding a smile, and was calm and composed. Yes, I'm in the live broadcast area. I can't show my unhandsome side. Kai Zongming trembled when he came to the center of the arena and was stared at by Fang Zhirong. He hurriedly calmed his mind and comforted himself by muttering to himself, Just a dead man, just a dead man. Fang Zhirong vaguely heard what he said. The veins on his forehead bulged and he almost couldn't stabilize his injury. The referee was almost amused. He shook his head and raised his hand. Begin. Crack. Fang Zhirong made a forced concentration right at the start of the match. He pushed off the arena with both feet and lunged at Kai Zongming at lightning speed. His vision blurred and his enemy was already close. Kai Zongming tensed up and followed his plan. He braced his feet and raised his arms to block. His 2 hands grabbed each other's cuffs in a weird posture. Bam! Fang Zhirong opened his 5 fingers and was about to grab his enemy's forearm. At this moment, 2 tearing sounds were heard. Kai Zongming tore off his sleeves and used the fabric of his clothes as a flag. He expanded his airflow and wrapped it around Fang Zhirong's palm. He countered with softness. Then, he flicked his elbow and threw his forearm at his opponent's face. He was ready to launch a second attack with his knuckles. Fang Zhirong's face darkened. He pulled his shoulder and lifted his other arm, staining the edge of his palm with a touch of green. Bam! He flipped his palm and hit his enemy's bare arm. In an instant, Kai Zongming felt the pain of thousands of arrows piercing his heart, knives scraping his bones, and needles stabbing his fingers. He instinctively hugged his arm and screamed. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. His face was pale and he looked like he was about to faint. The 27th move of the plague sect, Scorpion Tail Needle. This was a unique skill that magnified pain. Fang Zhirong took the opportunity to raise his waist and knee forward. The referee raised his leg in time and blocked the attack. He raised his right hand and announced, Round 4, Fang Zhirong wins. Final result, Shanbei University Martial Arts Club wins. Fang Zhirong took a deep breath and calmed down a little. He raised his hands and applauded to the audience who had supported him. Kai Zhongming was in a daze. He walked down the arena in a daze. Every step he took seemed to be extremely painful and drained of all his strength. When Lu Cheng and Wang Dali supported him, he recovered and felt the pain begin to subside. He spoke for the first time, F***CK. It F***King hurts. I'm relieved that you're alive and kicking. Lu Cheng chuckled and asked casually, how did you feel just now? Feel? I'm F***King doubting my life. Little Ming replied with a rich expression. The first round of the semifinals was over. Songqing University was eliminated. Shanbei University advanced to the finals for the fourth time in 4 years. Lu Cheng and the others were mentally prepared for failure. They weren't too sad, but they felt a little disappointed and had mixed feelings. After watching Renli show her invincible power and lead the Capital College Martial Arts Club to the finals, Songqing University's group took the bus back to the hotel. As soon as they entered the lobby, Lu Cheng saw a middle-aged man in a suit walking towards them with a smile on his face. He wore gold-rimmed glasses and had an elegant temperament. He introduced himself, I'm the representative of the Longhu Club. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.